Good evening, everyone. I am Councillor Laura Binks, Mayor of Strathbogie Shire Council. I would like to welcome you all to this ordinary council meeting of 19th of July 2022. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the places we live, work and play. We recognise and respect the enduring relationship they have with their lands and waters, and we pay respects to the elders past, present and emerging. Today we're meeting on the lands of the Taungurung peoples of the Eastern Kulin Nations, whose sovereignty here has never been ceded. Unfortunately, we've had to move to virtual meetings streamed through our website again for July and August to respond to the state government's advice to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 by working from home where possible. I wish to welcome you all watching the live stream. This meeting is being held in accordance with Strathbogie Shire's governance rules and the ministerial good practice guidelines for virtual meetings. All councillors and staff are working remotely and alone, so there is no need for them to wear masks. This means you can see and hear us properly. If we have any technical difficulties during today's meeting, which means we are unable to stream the meeting to the public, we will adjourn the meeting for 15 minutes. If the issue is not resolved after this time, we may extend the adjournment or even defer the consideration of unfinished business on the agenda for another day when the meeting is able to be streamed live in accordance with the ministerial guidelines. Voting by councillors at tonight's meeting will be held by a show of hands. If a councillor or officer has a conflict of interest in a matter, they'll be asked to leave the meeting and no discussion on the matter will occur or will commence until we're sure that they have done so. The person will then be contacted to rejoin the meeting after the matter has been considered and the vote is concluded. We have a number of community members who have registered to speak to items on the agenda this evening. It would be appreciated if members of the community can ensure that your camera and microphones are turned off until I call your name to make your presentation. When I call on you to speak, can you please turn on your camera and microphone? You will each have 5 minutes to make your submission. A bell will ring at the 4-minute mark so that you know to focus on those last few points that you wish to make. Councillors, you can ask questions of clarification but cannot enter into any debate with our submitters. CEO Solomon, are there any apologies for this evening?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, there are no apologies for this evening's meeting.
Thank you. Councillors and officers, are there any disclosures of conflicts of interest to be made under Rule 94 of our governance rules and Division 2 of the Local Government Act 2020? Councillor Haysbert, yes?
Thanks, Mayor Binks. I do have an interest in relation to item 9.1.6, as I have a relative who lives a few doors down from that application, but I don't believe it's a conflict of interest.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. CEO Solomon?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, I would like to declare a material conflict of interest in item 9.5.2 as it relates to my contract of employment. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO Solomon. I have a general conflict of interest in item 9.1.6, given friendships with parties involved in the matter. Deputy Mayor Murray will take over the chair in my absence. Are there any further conflicts of interest? No? Okay, moving on to confirmation of minutes of previous meetings. Councillors, the minutes from the ordinary council meeting held on 21st of June 2022 and the extraordinary council meeting held on 28th of June 2022 require confirmation. Councillors, can I have a motion, please? Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. Can I move that the minutes of the council meeting held on the Tuesday, 21st of June 2022 be confirmed, and that the minutes of the extraordinary council meeting held on Tuesday, the 28th, 2022 also be confirmed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Is there a seconder to the... Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. So I don't think anyone really wants to speak to them. Does anyone want to speak to the minutes? No. Then, councillors, I will put the motion to a vote. Can I get a show of hands for all those in favour, please? And thank you. Against? Sorry, can I just see against again? My screen there was a bit of a lag. I don't believe there was any, but okay, thank you. I declare that carried. Sorry, there might be a few glitches as we move back to an online session, and the system seems to have a little bit of a lag in it. So apologies if there's a few glitches this evening, and I ask for your patience. CEO Salomon, do we have any petitions to be tabled this evening?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. No, there are no petitions for tonight's meeting.
Thank you. So now to our session where we get to tell the community what we've been busy doing. Councillors, would any of you like to make a report to the community? Councillor Hayes-Burke.
Thanks, Mayor Binks. Yes, I do have a report. At the beginning of June, I attended the Australian Local Government Women's Association Victorian State Conference, which was hosted by Greater Shepparton City Council. It provided an important opportunity to meet and get to know our neighbouring councillors. Throughout the day and the evening, we had an impressive lineup of speakers from diverse backgrounds. We heard from Catherine Bennett, epidemiologist expert, who helped us reflect and understand the pandemic and various government responses, and we're still feeling those. We heard from the local government inspectorate and on the organisation's role and the important matters such as disclosure of personal interests, conflicts of interest, and complaints surrounding social media. We also learnt about the importance of inclusivity, partnerships, and progressing gender equality in the workplace. The Executive Director of Local Government Victoria discussed the role of municipal monitors. Greater Shepparton presented their climate emergency response, which I believe could also provide some good insight for us as we finalise our climate action plan. I was particularly inspired by Natasha Bamplet, a Yorta Yorta person whose powerful address was to raise awareness about privilege and underprivilege largely felt by First Nations people, and how when we share experiences we can break down those barriers and gain strength and wisdom from each other. It was a really valuable opportunity to network with other councils from around Victoria, and we shared and learnt from others' experiences. Thanks for allowing me the opportunity to attend and report back on that conference. I'd also like to acknowledge, to reflect on the meeting that we had on the 28th of June in relation to how Council approaches the 26th of January, which we know is a day that causes much pain for many Australians and members of our community. Sadly, the conversations that commenced by Council with the community, which had the potential to continue in the form of a deliberative engagement, came to a rather abrupt end, which I believe flies in the face of the community vision and the MOU with Taungurung Nation. I just want the community and especially Taungurung Nation to know that at the next opportunity, I will be pushing for these conversations to continue, as I know that there are many community members who are eager for Council to show leadership in this space. And I'd also like to thank and acknowledge those community groups who continue to discuss what truth-telling and reconciliation and the Uluru Statement means for local communities. I recently heard an interview with Linda Burney, who, as you know, is responsible for implementing the Uluru Statement from the heart in full, and she believes that some of the most important conversations actually need to happen at a local level. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Councillor Dickinson, would you like to make a report?
Thank you, Mayor. I hope I'm not stealing your thunder here, but today we had a visit from Harriet Shing, who's the Minister for Water, Regional Development and Equality. She came to have a look at the foreshore, the boardwalk in Nagambie, and I know that you, Mayor, also raised the matter of rowing with her, and she was also interested to hear about the Greening Euroa project. So you might have something to add to that because you spent far more time with her than I did. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to report on my activities on the last month. In particular, I'd like to say a few words about the Municipal Association of Victoria Rural Planning Conference that I attended last month. That conference was held between June the 1st and 3rd, and it dealt with rural and regional planning issues. Some of the highlights I'd like to talk about. We heard about demographics and data from Simon Kestenmacher about the fact that many people are moving to the regions and bringing their jobs with them, and we need to support them with digital infrastructure, which is an issue in this region, housing, professional services and healthcare. We also need to concentrate on some affordable housing and supply, and that was a common theme throughout the conference. And also he made the point that we should be investing in sport and those recreational infrastructures, as they're the glue that hold people together, which I thought was a good observation. We then went on to talk about city and country planning partnerships with Robert Pringle and Kristen Gilbert, who are planners from East Gippsland Council and Brimbank, City of Brimbank, and they've made an arrangement together and working together, those two organisations, and both organisations are benefiting from that increased efficiency and effectiveness of their partnership in terms of their planning work. And I dare say there are things that perhaps could be explored in that relationship and that might be of interest to our council as well. I then went on to we talked about key worker and affordable housing with Aaron Moy, who is a planner at Corangamite Shire, and another planner from Moyne Shire. And there are a number of projects around the state looking at key worker and affordable housing and looking at housing supply issues which tie into our strategic plan and strategic framework and the council plan. There's a real need to get employers together to discuss that issue with the community, and we've been doing that, and I'll mention that in a moment, a meeting that we went to with some of the businesses in Euroa this month. Finally, there was a conversation about state and heritage review and the importance of our local heritage. It's an area which I intend to have a look at because we have lots of beautiful heritage sites around our region, both particularly in Avenel and also in Euroa, and no doubt in Ngambia as well. In conclusion, I'd say that the conference was both educative, informative and relevant on a number of levels. Not only will it assist me in developing a deeper understanding of the various planning issues, but it also a broader understanding of those as well. So I thank the council and ratepayers for supporting my attendance at that conference. On the 30th of June, I attended an economic development forum at the Sevens Creek Hotel, which was a consultation session for Euroa, which was equally informative and enlightening. On the 1st to the 7th, there was a audit and risk committee, which I attended, which considered a wide range of agenda items that align with the committee's charter and their work plan. The committee looked at the outstanding items from previous internal audits and noted that there were a number of audit recommendations being acted upon by the administration and also more actions to complete. We finalised the strategic risk register at that meeting, which identifies a range of things that would impact on council operations the most and ensures we have plans in place to reduce these risks as much as possible. The committee will be provided with these updates each quarter on the highest risks and the further work that has to be completed by the officers to address those risks. The committee also reviewed the drafted budget and the asset plan, which were the key strategic documents for our council in terms of managing our financial and physical resources and to ensure we are financially sustainable in the long term. The committee also noted that we are in a sound financial position. On the 3rd of the 7th, I attended the NAIDOC Week Ablaze cinema screening. It was well attended, a moving film of self-discovery, and I thank all those who attended that screening as well and were involved in NAIDOC Week. 13th to 7th, we held the planning session at the Avenel Memorial Hall, a talk to the planner session. It was well attended, and I would like to thank both Braden and Daniel from the planning department for all their efforts there, and also for the community of Avenel for taking the opportunity to talk to the planners down there. 14th to the 7th this month, I met with the Renewable Avenel Energy Committee to plan their community, to develop their community plan on renewable options for the Avenel community, and I'll report more about that next month when that's finalised. And finally, on the 15th to the 7th, I represented the Shire at the funeral of Robin Steers, who was an ex-councillor here at the Strathbogie Shire from 2000 and 2009, and also mayor in 2003 and 2004. And I extend our condolences to his partner Carolyn and to his children Sam, Ben and Belinda. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Hourigan.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Just like to talk about a few things that I've participated in over the month. So we had a meeting with Euroa Connect in the Shire, which was very good to hear their point of view. And unfortunately, there's not much communication going on with us from ARTC or with Euroa Connect. But we'll speak about that a bit more, I suppose, tonight. But I wanted to reach out and say thank you to them and their group for approaching us and having a really good discussion regarding it. Also like to thank Rotary. I was invited to their 75th years of Rotary and also their presidential changeover dinner, which is brilliant. Rotary do a lot for the community, and I was very humbled for the invite, and we welcome Bob and Faith Irvine now as the new presidents of Rotary, and it will be great to work with them and what they will bring to Rotary. I'd also like to thank the cinema for the $5 school holiday movies, which has allowed many families to be able to gather and have a really good day out with the children at such a cheap price. And the volunteers have been doing an amazing job there, coordinating the school holiday fun and as well as, you know, the movies that they coordinated for NAIDOC Week. So a big shout out to the Euroa Cinema. I also attended the economic strategy session for Euroa, and it was a fantastic turnout. It was really great to see a lot of different people throughout, you know, the Euroa, Violet Town, Strathbogie, Longwood, that sort of area, which was, you know, focused on for Euroa, and I'm sure Nagambie did have one as well at night time that I didn't attend. But the ideas that were coming out and the involvement was absolutely fantastic. So I attended that. I also just wanted to use this time just to clarify a few questions that I've been getting in the community. So I have intended to stand, as you know, in the next for the Nationals as a candidate. However, I do have to go through a pre-selection process, and that will take place on August 7th. If I am pre-selected, I will be taking a leave of absence without pay until the state election, and if I'm not selected, then I'm back. I won't be taking leave of absence. I'll be here. So I just wanted to clarify that, but I will be here for the August meeting, and I'll report on how the pre-selection went as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hourigan. Did any other councillor like to make a report? No. Okay, great. I shall start by saying yes, July has been a productive month of advocacy meetings with multiple state and federal representatives. This morning, as Councillor Dickinson has mentioned, I was delighted to welcome the newly appointed Minister Harriet Singh, MLC, to Nagambie today to view the progress of the Nagambie Foreshore Walk, and we also spoke about the Commonwealth Games and Greening Euroa and our other advocacy projects, and I got to hand over our current Council Advocacy Ask profile, which outlines our top priorities, including the Commonwealth Games and the Lake Nagambie rowing bid for Strathbogie Shire. I'd like to thank Minister Singh for attending Nagambie, and we look forward to working with her and her officers to progress the needs of Strathbogie Shire. And she did say that they certainly know about us down in Spring Street, and we punch well above our weight, so that was really encouraging to hear. Earlier this week, CEO Salomon and I met with Sam Beryl MP, the newly elected member for Nichols, to discuss the needs and direction of our region and community. We'll be pleased to form a strong working relationship with Mr Beryl in the Shire and with federal ministers and representatives, and thank him for his time in coming to meet with us. This month we've also met with Dr Helen Hames, a federal member for Indi. Miss Wendy Lovell, MLC, member for Northern Victoria in the Legislative Council, who greatly supports the 2026 Commonwealth Games, Lake Ngambie rowing bid, and a number of other areas which we are continuing to promote to discuss and raise awareness in. Our advocacy efforts continue with further meetings scheduled with state and federal leaders and decision makers to advance our projects, enhance our municipal profile and obtain support and in turn really valuable funding. Council was proud to celebrate NAIDOC Week 2022 earlier this month with the theme Get Up, Stand Up, Show Up. In honour of this, a selection of Indigenous films shown at the Euroa Community Cinema, the Avenel Memorial Hall and Violet Townsend Dunstan's Hall, with some great attendance and interest in some of the local identities who featured. Currently, Talk to a Planner community consultations continue this week and next week. Tomorrow our planners will be in Ruffy, and on Thursday they will visit Strathbogie, and next week they'll be in Ngambie and Longwood. If you'd like to make an appointment to talk to a planner, please go to our website and you'll find the links and find the time and location that best suits you. But we've had really great feedback for those that have already occurred, so if you are keen to talk to our planners, please make a time to book in with them. Consultations may take up to an hour, and officers are happy to discuss specific planning application processes, requirements, as well as broader planning inquiries that suit your needs. And if a time doesn't suit, that we're happy to make a time outside of those ones that are available. So please get in touch. Currently, the draft public art policy is open for community input. I invite and encourage everyone to please visit our sharestrathbogie.vic.gov.au site and review the draft policy and make a submission to form the future direction of public art spaces for the community. And also on that, our Christmas decoration grants are now open and they close on Monday the 1st of August 2022 at 5 p.m. We urge community groups to come together to apply, as one grant will be awarded to each township. For more information, visit our website, www.strathbogie.vic.gov.au. Otherwise, you can email or phone council. Additionally, the Euroa Community Cinema is showing Lightyear, a PG animation adventure comedy film for all your family and friends at 6:30 p.m. on Friday the 22nd of July, and tickets are just $10. So if you are looking for a bit of fun night out and hopefully warm, bring your blankets though. You never go without a blanket in winter around here. Bring your own dinner and your blanket down and enjoy a night at the movies. And last but not least, I'd really like to acknowledge and congratulate the Ruffy Hall committee members, Bill Eddy and Henry Noy, for their award that was handed to them by the Department of Environment, Land and Water and Planning in recognition of their dedicated commitment and longevity of service to the Ruffy Hall. Both the incumbent president and vice president have served the hall since they were 17 years of age. It's an amazing contribution for Ruffy and the Strathbogie Shire community to celebrate. You have our respect and appreciation, Bill and Henry, and thank you for all you've done. And I certainly hope it inspires some of our younger members of our community to get involved in their local committees and sign up and be a part of that incredible opportunities that being on committees in communities bring. So thank you. CEO Solomon, are there any questions from the public this evening?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. No, there are no questions for public question time for this evening's meeting.
Thank you. Okay, so we will move now into the agenda. So we'll go to page 1 of our agenda and item 9.1.1, planning permit application number P2022-002, 13 lot subdivision at 42 Bury Street, Euroa. Director Tingay, may we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. Planning permit application number P2022-002 is for a multi-lot residential subdivision at 42 Brewery Street in Euroa. The lot sizes range from 462 square metres up to 790 square metres. The site is in a general residential zone and also the land subject to inundation overlay. The proposal has gained consent from all referral authorities. There is no native vegetation proposed for removal. However, native vegetation on site will be deemed lost given the proposed sites are less than 4,000 square metres. The application was advertised and one objection was received. Concerns raised in the objection related to footpaths, roads, drainage, fencing, water flow, and any fill to be placed on the land. These concerns have been addressed in the report and appropriate conditions will be included on any planning permit issued. Euroa is recognised as being able to accommodate population growth through infill development. The site is located in an established residential area that is suitable for infill development. The application has been assessed by planning officers and it is recommended that Council resolve to issue a notice of decision to grant a permit. There is a recommendation commencing on page 1 for Council's consideration. Thank you, Mayor Binks.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification of Director Tingay? Councillor Haysberg?
Director Tingay, will there be gas connected to this site? Could you please advise?
Thank you, Councillor Haysberg. So on the conditions of the planning permit, condition 56 requires connection to relevant facilities and utilities, including gas. However, there are no changes to the planning requirements regarding the connection at this time in order to cut down carbon emissions by 2030. The Victorian government is undertaking changes at the moment for new homes built in Victoria that will no longer have to connect to gas. But at this point in time, it's as the utilities remain. Thank you, Councillor Haysberg.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Are there any further questions or clarification? No? Councillors, we have the applicant's representative, Troy Spencer from Planography, who wishes to speak to us. Troy, welcome. Can you please turn on your camera and microphone? Thank you, Troy. You have 5 minutes to make your presentation.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me here to speak. It is a pretty exciting application given that this piece of land has been not used for residential purposes but sits quite prominently within a residential precinct. It's for a long time it's housed calves and some sheep. It's right next to the high school, so it's quite a great location, particularly for new families but also for people who work close by, such as at the school itself. In fact, Palmer Avenue nearby used to have all the homes in it that were for the teachers back in the day, but over time they've all been sold up. So some of this land has access, or has three sides access really, but one of them is Elgin Avenue, which has been not developed all the way. So one of the objections, or the objection that we got, was really just trying to clarify, make sure that no development that actually occurs on there was going to push more water on there as a result of fill being added. And they were really just concerned about things like whether or not there'll be an upgrade to the roads, whether or not there'd be adequate drainage. So we actually responded to that through a letter back to council. One of them was roads and drainage. We did make mention that there was 3 road frontages and that all roads will be upgraded in accordance with the infrastructure design manual. So that's a positive. There's an existing open drain that runs through the property. It'll be reconstructed through the easement shown on E2 on the plan on the proposed subdivision. So this is to be undertaken in accordance with the IDM also. So where the drain's going across the property at the moment, it'll be shifted across to nearby to be next to a boundary rather than be within a parcel of land. So it actually is opening up parcels of land that wouldn't have otherwise been available to use. Footpaths, there are existing footpaths along Campbell Street and Bury Street, and Elgin Avenue will require a footpath to be constructed, so that'll also occur. Fencing was another issue, but there's no proposed fence allotments at this stage. The parking, all properties are required to provide on-site parking. So they were concerned that it might actually bring about parking in the streets. Every new lot would be required, or every house is required to have at least 2 car spaces. One for visitors is also included in that. So yeah, I think it's a positive. It's really great to finally see a few lots being created in the main part of town where they haven't been in the past. So thank you for giving us this opportunity to talk about it.
Thank you, Troy. Councillors, did you have any clarifying questions for Troy? Councillor Hayes-Burke?
So thanks, Troy. So I guess I can ask, does the developer intend to connect gas to the site, or will that be up to each individual resident?
No, currently it is still a requirement for them to, the APA still requires them to, or they provide conditions for them to provide the services. So at this stage, it is still a condition on there to say prior to statement of compliance being issued for the subdivision, all services must be connected, and that includes gas. So until otherwise instructed that it's not a requirement, we'll still have to do it. Whether or not the people that actually construct have to tap into it at that stage, I don't know, but there'll definitely be a pipeline going past as a result.
Thank you, Troy. Councillor Murray, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Troy, could you tell me what the future is for the current old house that's on the development?
Yeah, I can. There's been some interest in it. Our client has had it for sale to pick up and take away, and there's been a couple of local people in the last 3-4 weeks that are interested in relocating it to a property over 40 hectares. So it's possible that that might occur. Otherwise, someone may be able to pick it up and use it locally as well, more centrally within the town. But at this stage, it certainly is going to be removed one way or the other. But I think they're trying to get on the front foot and try to have it organised earlier. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Murray. Thank you, Troy. Were there any further clarifications? No? Okay, Troy, can you please turn off your camera and microphone? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Hourigan?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. I would like to move a motion that we adopt the recommendation on page 1 of the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hourigan. Is there a seconder? Councillor Murray, thank you. Councillor Hourigan, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. I'm of the opinion that it's great to see infill development within the Euroa Township. We know that we are experiencing a housing crisis, and this helps our communities respond in a well-designed manner. I'm satisfied with the conditions that are attached to this application, that the concerns have been addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hourigan. Councillor Murray, would you like to speak or reserve your right?
I'll reserve my right.
Thank you. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Councillor Hayes-Burke?
I'm not opposed to this development per se. I think we do definitely need the infill development. I just think that this is an example of our planning scheme not keeping up to date with community expectations. I'm constantly hearing from the community, and it was even evident in the recent satisfaction survey, that there's a perception out there that council keeps allowing development which sees native trees being cut down. We definitely do need this infill development, don't get me wrong. I just believe that the community deserves better. It deserves our native assets to be protected through site-specific design. And I realise that, yes, approving this development will not necessarily physically see these trees being cut down, but they'll be deemed loss. And due to where they're located on the blocks, I don't think that they won't be able to be preserved into the future. I'd like to see established trees being preserved like they were in the recent application on Boundary Road South, through the creation of pocket parks and through working with the local environment group to achieve better environmental outcomes. I think these large trees are what makes this place appealing, and time again we hear from people that they're attracted to this area for its natural beauty. That's why I just don't believe that the planning scheme's keeping up to date with community expectations.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Would any councillor like to speak in support of the motion? Councillor Murray, would you like to?
Thank you, Mayor. I think it really is important that we have some infill development in Uriah. I think there is a real housing problem within this community, a lack of housing, and I think it needs to be addressed. This is one way in which we can address some of that by having more infill development within the town. I have some sympathy for Hayes-Burke view about the loss of trees, but and I would hope that in this development that is minimised, and I trust that that will be. Needless to say, it looks as if there may be some loss, but it will be minimal. And I think the benefits of this development far outweigh that small loss. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Hourigan, would you like your right of reply?
Yes, please, Mayor Binks. I just want to address the native tree issue. I think the report is very detailed, and I think the developer has tried very hard to keep these trees. Now, this is in a residential zone. We do need infill development. We are suffering a housing crisis. Our homelessness is through the roof. I will not put a native tree in front of trying to provide housing for our less fortunate in this environment at the moment. We're losing native trees because of, Rocky's Bridge, near there, or we're losing native trees for roads, etc. I can understand. But in this particular application, I think it's fair and reasonable, and what the developer has come up with to retain the trees is absolutely amazing and what we're looking for. And I don't want it to be off-putting for other developers to approach us because of this. Thank you, Mayor Binks.
Thank you, Councillor Hourigan. Councillors, I'll now put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands for all those in favour, please? And against? And I declare that motion carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move on to page 25 of the agenda, item 9.2.1, planning permit application number P2021-005, multi-lot subdivision creation of access and subdivision adjacent to the principal road network, removal of native vegetation, 196 High Street, Nagambie. Director Tingay, can we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. Planning permit application P2021-005 is for a multi-lot residential subdivision located to the south of Nagambie, with the new access to the subdivision to be created from High Street and the required removal of native vegetation to the minimal extent necessary. The proposal will create 36 lots ranging in sizes from 500 square metres up to 1,220 square metres. The site is in the general residential zone and is not subject to any overlays. The proposal has gained consent from all of the referral authorities. The application was advertised and there were 4 objections received. Concerns outlined in the objections were relating to access, water pressure, drainage and construction management. These concerns have been addressed in this report and appropriate conditions will be included on any permit issued. Since the writing of this report, all objections have now been formally withdrawn in writing. The land has been identified for future residential growth, and the proposals meets the objectives of the municipal planning strategy and the planning policy framework, the purpose of the zone, and accordance with the relevant decision guidelines of the Strathbogie planning scheme. Given that all objections have been withdrawn, it is recommended that a permit be granted. There is a clerical error on page 25 of the agenda. Contained within the recommendation, it should read, and this is in summary, that the council decides to grant a permit. Councillors, I do apologise for this error, and thank you, Mayor Binks.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification of the officer? Councillor Haysberg.
Thanks, Mayor. Director Tingay, can you please just clarify for me how the 5% contribution to open space works for these applications?
You're muted.
Sorry, everyone. Thank you, Councillor Haysberg. In relation to the conditions of the permit for each application that's presented tonight, and there's basically a cluster of 3 for that particular area, there will be a requirement for a 5% public open space contribution, and that's based on the value of the land. And this contribution will be used to help fund the provision of future open space in the area. There is a concept plan that is included in tonight's agenda papers that has been prepared, which indicates where we'd like to see some open space on the land directly to the southeast. This is where the open space contributions will be provided will be spent.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Are there any further questions or clarification from the Director? Councillor Haysberg.
Thanks, Director. And there were a few complaints about water pressure, I guess, comes up quite a bit in Nagambie. I just was hoping you could explain if this will be an issue and what the authority's planning to do, I guess, to alleviate any issues with water pressure.
Thank you, Councillor Haysberg. So this is something that will be raised with Golden Valley Water. It's certainly not something that is unusual to the residents of Nagambie with low water pressure, but it will also be raised with Golden Valley Water as well.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Are there any further questions or clarification regarding this application? Councillor Haysberg.
Sorry, so many questions. And will there be plans, landscaping plans that'll have to be approved by officers prior to this application being awarded?
Thank you, Councillor Haysberg. Yes, there will be. I'm just trying to find the condition number for you right now, but yes, there are landscaping plans that will be required from condition number 15. There are also a number of range of conditions for compliance to be issued prior to the subdivision as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Any further questions or clarification? Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. Director, could you please outline how much native vegetation loss there will be in this development?
Would you please just hold for one moment while I find that piece of information?
Certainly, Director Tingay.
Thank you for allowing me that time to find the actual removal. So the native vegetation to be removed under this permit is 0.134 hectares of native vegetation, comprising of one large tree, 3 small trees, with a strategic biodiversity value of 0.100. There are also the necessary offsets that are required as well, that form part of this permit.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Are there any further questions or clarification? No? Okay, councillors, we do not have any speakers to this item this evening, so can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the amended recommendation that's listed that is listed on page 25 of the agenda, and it reads: having caused notice of planning application number P2021-005 to be given under Section 52 of the Planning Environment Act 1987, having considered all the matters required under Section 60 of the Planning Environment Act 1987, decides to grant a permit under the provisions of the Strathbogie planning scheme in respect to the land known as Lot 2 PS 415-618V 10384 F571, parish of Tabilk at 196 High Street, Ngambia, Victoria, for the multi-lot subdivision, and the conditions as listed on page 25 and subsequent pages. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Dickinson. Councillor Murray, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, just briefly to say that I think this is a good development in Ngambia, and one which I think is well needed. There is a minimal loss of trees on this site, and one which will be developed, and I think the landscaping will adequately offset some of that some of that loss. I think it's a well-designed plan for development, and I commend it to council.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Dickinson, would you like to speak now or reserve your right?
No, I'll speak now. Thank you.
Thank you,
Mayor. Yeah, Ngambia's a growth town and in dire need of more housing, more accommodation. We hold so many events in this town every year, and accommodation's at a premium. So this is just part of the progress, and I look forward to seeing it all happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would any other councillor like to speak in support of the motion? No. Okay, councillors, I'll put the motion.
Sorry, Sorry, a bit delayed here. Don't know if it's me or the computer, the internet. I just want to commend the officers on this one, because I know that when this area was rezoned, along with the other application, the areas in discussion tonight, there was no development plan overlay, which is what we really require to get the best outcomes for the community. So the officers did go ahead and create a master plan that oversees this parcel of land and the adjacent sort of greenfield site, to ensure that all the requirements are met, so that the layouts are interconnected, that the infrastructure and landscaping all meet the necessary conditions to, I guess, make sure as much as possible that it's not sort of like a hodgepodge of development, and that it's to get the best outcomes in terms of the flow of traffic and the footpaths. And I think that they've just done a great job in the situation before them in getting this master plan up so that then we have something that developers can then look at and see what needs to be done. And I do note that the area beside it, as Director Tingay said, there's a space allowed for some parkland. So that's really positive because this is quite a lot of development. And so these houses will definitely need, some parkland.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. So I will now put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands for all those in favour, please? And against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. So we now move to page 52 of the agenda, item 9.1.3, planning permit application number P2021-102, multi-lot subdivision 170 to 194 High Street, Nagambie. Director Tingay, can we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. Planning permit application number P2021-102 is for another multi-lot residential subdivision located to the south of Nagambie. The proposal will result in the creation of 37 lots, one being a super lot measuring 3.397 hectares. Other lots will range in size from 575 square metres through to 1,494 square metres. The proposed roads will connect with the existing and proposed network. No native vegetation is located on this site. The site is in the general residential zone and is not subject to any overlays. The proposal has gained consent from all the relevant authorities. The application was advertised and 5 objections were received. Concerns outlined in the objections were related to access, water pressure, drainage and construction management. These concerns have been addressed in this report and appropriate conditions will be included on any planning permit issued. Since the writing of this report, 1 objection has been formally withdrawn in writing. The land has been identified for future residential growth and the proposal meets the objectives on the municipal planning strategy and the planning policy framework, the purpose of the zone and accords with the relevant decision guidelines of the Strathbogie planning scheme. There is a clerical error on page 52 of the agenda. As there are still objections remaining to the proposal, the recommendation on page 52 should in summary read, a notice of decision to grant a permit. Mayor Binks, I do apologise for this error. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Tingay, and apologies accepted. Councillors, are there any questions or clarification of Director Tingay? No? Councillors, we have the applicant's representative, Tony Onley from Onleys, who wishes to speak to this item. Tony, welcome. Can you please turn on your camera and microphone? Thank you. You have 5 minutes to make your presentation, Tony.
Thank you. Look, in short, I just really want to thank the planning department and their team for helping progress this application, particularly when the overall Nagambie South Precinct plan, like as was spoken earlier, there was no really ODP or overall development plan of the site, and by engaging a consultant to do the overall precinct plan, it just enabled to see where the 3 applications in particular all fitted in with each other and provided greater connectivity, really, which did help deal with some of the or resolve some of the objectors' concerns. So, in short, that's all really I've got to say.
Thank you, Tony. Councillors, do you have any questions or clarifications for Tony? No? Okay. Thank you, Tony. Thank you for taking the time to present to us this evening. And if I can ask you to please turn off your camera and microphone, which you've done incredibly swiftly. Thank you. Councillors, we don't have any further speakers to this item this evening. So can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the motion as listed on as amended on page 52. The recommendation that's listed on page 52. My apologies. Do I read the? Would you like me to read the motion?
Yes, please.
Having caused notice of planning application number P2021-102 to be given under Section 52 of the Planning Environment Act 1987, and having considered all the matters required under Section 60 of the Planning Environment Act 1987, decides to issue a notice of decision to grant a permit under the provisions of the Strathbogie planning scheme in respect of the land known as Lot 3, PS 4145618, 170-194 High Street, Nagambie, Victoria 3608, for a multi-lot subdivision in accordance with the endorsed plan, subject to the conditions that are listed beginning on page 52.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Is there a seconder to the motion, please? Councillor Hourigan. Thank you. Councillor Murray, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just briefly to say this is the second of three applications, which all form a jigsaw, which have been really expertly put together by the planning department, so that they all fit nicely together and all join up, and that, as Tony mentioned, there's some connectivity between all of them. I recommend it to the council, and thank the planners for all their hard work.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Hourigan, would you like to speak to the motion or reserve the right?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. Just like to quickly say that this is really great planning, having the three blocks working together. I have been to visit the site in the last week or so, and it is very close to the main strip of Nagambie, with a really lovely footpath and beautiful native trees out the front and undercover. So I think it's a very lovely spot. And I do like to always acknowledge that I have read the objections to this application, and I do believe, it is my opinion, that the officers have addressed your concerns in this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hourigan. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion, or alternatively in support of the motion? No? Okay, councillors, I shall put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands for all those in favour, please? And against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. We're now moving on to page 79 of the agenda, item 9.1.4, planning permit application number P2021-103, multi-lot subdivision, Penrose Street, Nagambie. Director Tingay, may we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. Planning permit application number P2021-103 is the third in this area for a multi-lot residential subdivision located to the south of Nagambie. The proposal will result in the creation of 12 lots ranging in size from 639 square metres up to 668 square metres. The proposed roads will connect in with the existing and proposed road network, including Penrose Street. No native vegetation is located on site. The site is in the general residential zone and is not subject to any overlays. The proposal has gained consent from all referral authorities. The application was advertised and 2 objections were received. Concerns outlined in the objections related to access, water pressure, drainage and construction management. These concerns have been addressed in this report, and appropriate conditions will be included on any planning permit issued. Since the writing of this report, no objections have been formally withdrawn. The land has been identified for future residential growth, and the proposal meets the objectives of the municipal planning strategy and the planning policy framework. The purpose of the zone and accords with the relevant decision guidelines of the Strathbogie planning scheme. The application has been assessed by officers, and it is recommended that council resolve to issue a notice of decision to grant a permit. Mayor Binks, there is a recommendation on page 79 for council's consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, are there any questions or clarification of Director Tingay? Councillor Haysbert.
Thanks, Mayor. Director Tingay, how have the objectors' concerns around access on Penrose Street sort of been attended to?
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. So these have been placed, so there's a number of conditions on this notice of decision to grant a permit that have been included. Also, the development of the master plan essentially on the site to help guide the traffic management of these particular subdivisions, and any further subdivisions will also be able to help derive and direct how we would like to see those traffic management take place. There is also access as well to High Street as well that's been provided. In terms of the actual construction work, you know, there's relevant plans that are required to be submitted to the relevant authorities in relation to this development as well.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Were there any further questions or clarifications? No. Councillors, we have the applicant's representative, Tony Onley, from Onley's, wishes to speak to this item. Tony, welcome back with us.
There, thank you. Just really no more to add from the previous application. Just, yeah, the cooperation of the planning department and actually putting together the overall development plan, or the overall network plan, has helped just work out the road network, which was one of the major concerns, and provide at least 2 points of access to the proposed development.
Great. Thank you, Tony. Thanks for your time. Are there any questions or clarification for Tony from councillors? Councillor Haysbert.
Thanks, Tony. So will this development provide upgrades to Penrose Street, or just the extension?
Yeah, there's no proposed upgrades in Penrose Street. It's just the extension, and then via the previous application 102, that's where the future road network will link in out to High Street.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Tony. Any further clarifications? No. Okay, thank you, Tony. You can turn your camera and microphone off, and thank you for addressing council this evening.
Thank you.
Councillors, can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Haysbert.
Oh, thanks. Sorry. Yes, I would like to move the recommendation on page 79 of the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Dickinson. Thank you. Councillor Haysbert, would you like to speak to the motion?
I don't think there's anything more to add other than, I do hope that the objectors' concerns with access to that road are alleviated through the design of the master plan. And I think that, that was great foresight from the officers.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. Councillor Dickinson, would you like to speak to the motion now, or reserve your right?
No, I'll speak now. Thanks, Mayor. Look, just adding to my comments before, Nagambie needs this. We need this accommodation, and that's what growth is all about. And I'm very supportive of this development. I think there are 85 lots in all over the three areas, so it should go a long way towards helping the Nagambie Township overcome its housing shortage. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion or add anything in support of the motion? Okay, councillors, I shall put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands for all those in favour, please?
Have we frozen?
I haven't. Have you frozen, Reg? Oh, Councillor Dickinson.
I was just frozen out. Did you hear me or not?
Yes, we heard you, Councillor Dickinson. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep. I got frozen out and now I'm back in. So that's all right. No worries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So any against? No, I declare that motion carried. Thank you, councillors. Okay, we now move on to page 104 of the agenda, item 9.1.5, planning permit application number P 2021-231, use and development for a cellar door and liquor licence, 54 Longwood Mansfield Road, Longwood East. Director Tingay, may we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. Planning permit application number P 2021-231 is for cellar door sales and an associated liquor licence at 54 Longwood Mansfield Road, Longwood East. The site contains an established vineyard. The owners have applied for a liquor licence to be able to have tastings and to sell the wine on site. There is room to provide adequate car parking on site. Advertising signage will be limited in size. The proposal is temporary in nature with limited operating hours and a small number of patrons. The application was advertised and one objection was received. No neighbouring residents have objected to the proposal. The application has been assessed by officers and it is recommended that Council resolve to issue a notice of decision to grant a permit. There is a recommendation commencing on page 104 for Council's consideration. Thank you, Mayor Binks.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, are there any questions or clarification of the officer? No. I just noticed that Reg has just disappeared from my screen. I might just check that he's okay. Oh, there he is. He's back. Okay, we've got him back. Okay. So if there are no questions of the officers, councillors, we have the applicant's representative, Troy Spencer from Planography, who wishes to speak to this item. Troy, welcome again. If you can turn on your camera and microphone, please.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Troy. You have 5 minutes to make your presentation.
Great. So this property, it's pretty good proposal. It used to be Ghana's heritage wine. It's a well-established vineyard. The new owners have been there for a little while now, and they've started to also have a flower farm as part of it. So they're actually have come from that background. So they're going to be introducing some flower farming, eventually have some produce to sell locally and at the markets. But the main thing for this one really was to re-establish what was an original liquor license and also cellar door sales. The original one used to be sold from the house, whereas this one will be, you go straight down the driveway past the house and you get to a nice area where we've set aside a car space for at least, there's a lot more than 8 spaces, but at least 8 spaces, which is the requirement for 20 people. They've also got a temporary building that will be brought in and located in a place that'll have a nice little courtyard feel to it and an open window and a bit of alfresco outside. So the intention is to get going and start selling some of the wine that they've been producing, and over the next few years come back to council with a new application for a much bigger and nicer cellar door sales area and potentially maybe even a food area as well. So that's about it. It's a good one. Thank you.
Thank you, Troy. Councillors, are there any questions or clarification for Troy this evening? No? Okay. Troy, you can turn off your camera. Thanks for your time presenting to us this evening.
Thank you.
Councillors, can I have a motion and can you state what your motion is, please? Councillor Haysbert.
Thanks, Mayor. I wish to move the motion on page 104 of the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. Do we have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Murray. Thank you. Councillor Haysbert, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. As we've been alluded to, that there's already a vineyard on site. So this is a great way that council can support a small business by allowing them to increase their offering to the community and hopefully keep more tourists in the area, I think, and I also think it's a win for locals. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Haysbert. Councillor Murray, would you like to speak to the motion or reserve your right?
I'll speak now. Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to recommend this to Council. It's an old winery. It's just a re-establishment of such, and it will have minimal impact on the minimal negative impact on the area. It has good access, and there aren't any problems there. And I think it'll be a great benefit for the Longwood district there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Or alternatively, in favour of the motion? No? Okay, councillors, I shall put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands for all those in favour, please? And against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. We are now moving to page 115, item 9.1.6. So I'll read out the item and then I shall leave, is how the agenda is set out for me. So we've got item 9.1.6, planning permit application number P2021-170, use and development of land for a distillery and associated sales, use and development for a manager's dwelling, use and development for group accommodation, liquor license, business identification signage, 1890 Euroa Strathbogie Road, Kissbrook. As I've declared a conflict of interest in this matter and in accordance with section 21A of the Local Government Act 2020, I will hand the chair to the Deputy Mayor Murray and will exit this meeting. Do I need a motion to hand the chair? No? Okay. Deputy Mayor Murray, can you take the chair, please?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll take over for this item and wait for your departure.
Thank you.
So I confirm now that Mayor Binks has exited the meeting. Director Tingay, may we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Planning permit application P2021-170 is for the use and development of the land for a gin distillery and associated sales, a manager's dwelling, group accommodation, a liquor licence to produce for tastings and sales, and a business identification signage. The proposal was advertised and 12 objections have been received, as well as 5 statements of support. These are detailed within the Planning Officer report attached to the Council agenda. Since the writing of this report, no objections have been formally withdrawn. An information session was held with officers and objectors, and it was determined that most objectors are against the proposal in its entirety. While the objectors listed several grounds for concerns, a consistent theme is the proposed group accommodation and the proposed hours of operation. The officer assessment has determined that the site can accommodate the proposed uses and development without impacting on the amenity of the area, subject to the appropriate conditions. It is recommended that Council resolve to issue a notice of decision to grant a permit. There is a recommendation on page 115 for Council's consideration. Thank you, Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Director. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification of the officer? Councillor Horrigan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Officer Tingay, with the objections, did the applicant work with the objectors and reduce some of the, the application that was being popped forward?
Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. Yes, there were some amendments that were made, and then also in regards to a restaurant and also the ability to be able to host weddings as well. There are also a number of conditions that have been included in the in this recommendation to be able to manage some of the concerns that objectors have raised as well. Thank you, Councillor Horrigan.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Horrigan?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And with the applicant's amendments made, did any of the objectors withdraw their objection?
No, none were withdrawn.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions of the director? In that case, councillors, we have several parties wishing to speak to this item this evening. Our first submission on this item tonight is from Carol Crow. Carol, welcome, and can you please turn on your camera and your microphone? You have 5 minutes to make your presentation.
Hello. There's two aspects of this application I'd like to speak to. The first one is water, and I'd like you to consider this within the context of climate crisis that we're in and that we're facing and is going to be serious for Strathbogie Shire in the coming years. We all know that it's going to be very much drier and hotter. So in this application, there's a couple of aspects to it. The input, one assumes that they're going to be irrigating the trees. They've got hundreds of trees in already. That's a lot of water to irrigate the trees. But also the amount of water that will be used to produce the gin. I'm assuming that will be a lot of water, but in the application, they don't give details about that. There's not information of it. I find that extraordinary. Second aspect is wastage. There's sewage waste and there's also presumably waste from the distillery. But again, there's not data on this. It's not detailed, not that I could find. It's a very big application. They talk about storage ponds for this wastage. But again, within the context of the changing climate, we have huge storms up here. We have big downpours and they're going to be, scientists are saying, happening more and more regularly. So if they're relying on storage ponds, these overflow, and this property is at the headwaters of Sevens Creek. It's a very serious issue and I don't think it's been addressed in the application. Now, council might talk to the applicant about this and it might be addressed. They might come up with answers for it. But there's already big commercial growers up here drawing on the groundwater, which all the community up here rely on. We have bores, farmers use it, I use it, my property's in town. The commercial growers use a lot already, and at some point I think council needs to address it if they're going to be seriously looking after the community and addressing climate change. That's my first concern. The second concern is, and this also is very, very serious for the tableland, the increased traffic flow on our roads. I don't need to tell you that we have, not narrow necessarily, but they're windy country roads. We've got beautiful roadside verges, and these are incredible for the wildlife we have up here, and they're used as corridors for the wildlife. What I want to explain to councillors is that in recent years, with the increase in tourism and also with all the people who've recently moved up here from the city, there's been significant wildlife roadkill. It's, and look, I myself have had 2 near collisions, head-on collisions, where people are coming around bends and cutting corners. This has got worse in recent years. So one could assume if this distillery goes ahead that people leaving after their gin tasting, you could assume most people would be under the influence of alcohol, and that many people would be leaving at sunset and dark after the distillery or the restaurants closed. So in terms of safety for us on the road, but I think more significantly the wildlife, it's, you know, it's something to really consider. Yeah. There's other stuff. I talk really fast, sorry, because I thought 5 minutes would go quick. Yeah, I would like you to think about that last point in terms of species extinction. In the last years, I used to have 3 koalas that regularly visited my property, and in the last few years, I've not seen them. A couple of years ago, the resident koala at the primary school disappeared. Somebody found that koala dead. They've just been recently declared functionally extinct. So it's pretty serious, and I know that a lot of people visit the tableland to see the koalas because we used to be able to regularly see them up trees. I mean, they're still here, but it's worth thinking about because there is going to be significantly more traffic. That's probably all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Carol. Yes, 5 minutes can go slow when you don't want it to, I suppose, or fast when you do. Councillors, yeah. Do you have any questions of clarification for Carol? Yes, Councillor Horrigan.
Hi, Carol. Thank you for presenting
Hello.
tonight. Hello. Do you? I mean, I am definitely not a gardener by any means. So, do you know the amount of water that is required for the juniper plants for their growing? Is it a high need water-based plant, or is it low need? Are you aware of that?
No, I'm not aware, but I do know because I grow a lot of berries, and presumably they'd be going for maximum juicy junipers. So I suspect, you know, they're commercial growers. Any commercial grower I know, and I've worked on berry farms, they irrigate daily sometimes, but I couldn't tell you. I don't know the answer to that. But the more irrigation those trees get, the juicier and the bigger the berries will be. That's a fact.
Thank you, Carol. Councillors, are there any further questions of the submitter? Councillor Hayes-Burke.
Hi. Thanks, Carol. Would you be able to suggest a time that wouldn't compete with wildlife on the road so much? I mean, with people leaving the distillery, because you talked about sort of dusk being a prime time for animals on the roads. So what would maybe be your suggestion of a safer time, I guess, where it wouldn't be impeding so much on the native animals?
Well, at this time of year, for example, it would be 4:30. You know, it's starting to get, you know, close to 5:30. Yeah, the wildlife is at 5 o'clock. The wildlife is beginning. Yeah. So that's in regard to wildlife. More alcohol-induced traffic on the road is not appealing to me as a driver on the roads. Yeah, it's already significantly more tricky to drive on these roads. One has to be much more cautious in these recent years with so many more people moving up here and not being so familiar with how to drive on country roads. And presumably the distillery would be attracting people from out of the area and people from Melbourne who are coming up for visits.
Thank you, Carol. Are there any, and thank you, Councillor. Are there any other questions of the submitter? That being the case, Carol, thank you very much for your submission. Can you please turn off your camera and your microphone?
Thank you. Great.
Thank you. Our next submission is from Simeon Ayres. Sim, welcome, and can you please turn on your camera and your microphone? You have 5 minutes to make your presentation.
Got it. Am I there yet? Can't seem to switch the camera off on. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, I think, but we can't see you.
Oh, look, you might not be able to see me. It's saying I've got to download Teams, which I haven't done yet, so I didn't realise. So if you can just hear my voice, if you're okay by that, I'm happy to just speak.
Yes, we're okay by that. Thank you,
Okay.
Simeon.
So I'm a direct, myself and my wife are a direct neighbour. We've lived up here for nearly 25 years now. Now, when Wayne and Tess moved here, we spoke to them and they told us about their plans. But I think the big bone of contention for me is when we actually looked at the plans they had, we just went, wow, this is not a manager's quarters and a distillery. It is a restaurant. It's a function centre. It's 6 accommodation units, and just what a painful process that is to come across that, you know. And questioning them about that, they said, look, our planning consultant said we should apply for the top notch, apply for everything we could possibly dream of, and it'll be walked back. Now, if that's the process of planning, then the process seems to be fundamentally wrong. And I'm just kind of at loss for words that we've actually come to this in the way we plan stuff out like this, especially something that's as big as this for the tableland, which really the whole community should be involved in deciding about it. But we're not. The letters go out to local residents. The letters go. Now I put a letter about it on Bogie Tree here, so people could actually go a bit further. And obviously, there's a lot of pain in the community. There's some division. Some people want a gin distillery, but what I say is, look a bit further, and it's not just a gin distillery. Now, I'm not against Wayne and Tess, the applicants, building a house and making a gin distillery if it comes within a certain framework. If they're not going to use, I don't even know how much water is used to make 1 litre of gin yet. Is it 10 litres? Is it 30 litres? Or is it 1.5 litres? I don't know that. What happens to the waste? We don't know. And like Carol was saying, what does happen to the waste when it's going to drain into the Magilton Creek, which is still very much a live creek full of platypus, full of yabbies, a healthy waterway. So I'm concerned at the top of the headwaters there. I just wanted, when I was thinking about this afternoon, I was just imagining a different way, you know. But if someone comes to the area and says, I want to do this, you know, the actual planning consultant was a consultant and actually consulted the community instead of leaving it to council, who has to follow Victorian government rules to come up with a to say yes or no. Now, council are held in that thing. But if Wayne and Tess and their consultant drew up some plans of what they liked and took it to the local community in a hall and said, look, we'd actually like to do this. We'd like to do this. And the community actually gets to speak, and the community gets to say, look, you know, we think it's a good idea, but we're worried about this. And it was actually a community consultation, which this isn't. Now, I know I don't want to diss council on this, but it doesn't work like this, you know. So this is the first time I've had to do this, to sit on a screen and oppose something that's happening. I've never done it before, but I just think it's too big. So at the end of the day, and I probably won't go five minutes, but at the end of the day, what I'd like, it seems to me like council has said, or planning department has said, you're going to approve this. And okay, that's going to, if you're going to approve it, you're going to approve it. Wayne and Tess at the end of the day will be accepted in the community, and they'll come and live here. And we want to get on as a community at the end of the day. However, 6 accommodation unit, the restaurant was too much. It's been reduced to 49 people. The weddings and functions, too much. The 6 accommodation units, I would love to see them reduced to 2, so be put close to the house so that they can actually police their guests and not have them as far away as possible from the house. And I'd love those opening hours When I look at gin distilleries or distilleries and wineries, when I look at the opening hours, if it is just tastings, really it should just be open from 10 till 4. You don't need to open till 7. What's that about? Is that going to be a quasi bar that's going to operate up there? I don't know. Thank you for listening, councillors, people on there. I think that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Sim. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification from Sim? Councillor Horrigan?
Hi, Sim. Thank you very much for coming to talk to us tonight. Sim, I noticed that you made, you were talking about the wastewater. Have you read the report and what they're required to do with their wastewater, and are you satisfied with that particular response?
Look, I don't even know how much wastewater there's going to be yet. To me, there's so many vagaries in the report that there's not enough information to actually come out with something that says, yeah, I totally trust this. So I have read it, but I'm a layman here, and I don't understand it totally.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sim, and thank you, Councillor. Are there any further questions for the submitter? That being the case, thank you, Sim. Can you please turn off your camera and microphone? We'll move on to the next submission from Kylie McNaughton. Kylie, welcome. And can you please turn on your camera and your microphone? You'll have 5 minutes to make your presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, councillors. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
You can. I'm having trouble with the camera. I'm sorry. New to this. First time I've had to do this, so bear with me. So yeah, my name's Kylie. I'm a landowner adjacent to the applicant's property. I hope you have all read my detailed objection and the letter of support from the Victorian Farmers Federation for consideration of my valid reasons, not only as a landowner, but as a business owner in farming. When I purchased my property amongst Farming Zone, there were two very important points of consideration. Firstly, I didn't want to wrongly invest my hard-earned savings into a property that wouldn't cater to my business plans. And secondly, it was my understanding that I would be protected by council based on the Strathbogie planning scheme to not fall victim to overdeveloped properties that are industrial and commercial in nature on Farming Zone lots smaller than 40 hectares. Whilst I do support tourism, I strongly encourage council to move the commercial and accommodation units to the larger towns within the Shire, as stated in clause 11.03.15 of the Strathbogie planning scheme, where infrastructure and accessibility are already in place. This would largely reduce carbon emissions from extra traffic to the area and assist in making a positive impact to reach environmental targets set out in the Action Plan Sustainable Strathbogie 2030. If the proposed development was to be approved, having this overscaled tourist park in such close proximity to my property, especially the 3 holiday units close to my boundary, will undoubtedly cause unnecessary noise from drunken crowds and place a daily burden on myself and my property, to which would force me to regularly call police to assist in any confrontations. I would also endure constant and disruptive noise from cars, car doors, etc., in an area that is rural and peaceful. As a visual, it doesn't reflect the area. There is nothing charming about the design. Therefore, the commercial and accommodation buildings need to be removed from the application or largely reduced in scale for its proposed purpose of gin tasting and cellar door. Both or either of these options would encourage the possibility to continue the agricultural aspect of the land. To maintain an undisruptive lifestyle for myself and farming business, I believe the proposed operating hours are excessive for a farming rural area and need to be reduced to less days with closure at 4 p.m. It is a proposed gin tasting facility, not a pub, and a reduced amount of patrons also required. Lastly, Our most precious resource, water, is being carelessly wasted for the use of hot tubs. The amount of chemicals required to maintain and clean the hot tubs after each use, as well as the chemical vapours and constant noise from the pumps, is a serious and a valid concern as a neighbouring property. As a community, a state and a country, we can't afford such waste of water. Therefore, hot tubs must be removed from the application. Just to fill in there, it is about 37 litres that requires to make 1 litre of gin, but this may need just to verify that. There's a few people wanting to know earlier. So I finish with I encourage council to discuss my valid concerns so I can move forward with my farming business. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Kylie. Councillors, are there any questions for our submitter? That being the case, thank you, Kylie, for your submission. Can you please turn off your camera and your microphone?
Thank you.
The next submission is, thank you. The next submission is from Adrian Booth. Adrian, welcome. And can you please turn on your camera and your microphone? You have 5 minutes to make your presentation.
Having a bit of trouble here. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you, Adrian.
Okay. I have a bit of trouble with the camera, but as long as you can hear me, that's the most important thing, I think. So as you said, my name is Adrian. I fully concur with the previous objectors in everything they've already said. I have a property adjacent to the site of the proposal. I'm steadfast in my view that the proposal is not befitting of the area, and on such a small parcel of land, 9 additional buildings would make it a high density usage on 12 hectares. The proposed shipping container buildings adjacent to my boundary would be an horrendous result for myself and other neighbours. In meetings I've had with other property owners that are also adjacent to the site of the proposal, they have all been clear in their disapproval of such a proposal. There are many aspects that we all agree on that would be impactful to all of us, including but not limited to excessive scale, 6 accommodation units, high traffic volumes, continual car lights into properties, continual late night disturbances from patrons of accommodation shipping containers, loss of agricultural land, just to name a few. Whilst there are many valid objections as to why this proposal should not be permitted on this site, there are no valid reasons made in support of this proposal as to why this specific site is suitable and the only possible location for the intended purpose. The accommodation can be done on residential commercial land. The factory component of the proposal can be done on industrial commercial premises without utilising valuable agricultural farming land. Our country is facing a huge challenge as our population moves from 25 to 50 million. It is more important now than ever to retain our agricultural base and not let precious farming land be used for purposes other than agriculture. Food security has never been more vital as it is now and will only become more important in the future. Council has made many efforts to reduce carbon emissions according to the Sustainable Strathbogie 2030 report. In the report, it states, whilst Strathbogie Shire Council does not have operational control over community emissions, it does have a facilitative role to play. All the gains previously made by Council using carbon emission reduction measures would be eradicated by facilitating this proposal. 124 car visits per day is the stated vision of the applicant. Most cars would travel a considerable distance to arrive at the site. By having the commercial and accommodation aspects of the proposal in a more central location, this would allow for public transport access and reduce distances travelled and thereby reduce emissions greatly. Having all these emission targets is pointless if Council is going to facilitate such inappropriate proposals that do the opposite. It's pretty much sums up what I thought I could get in 5 minutes, councillors. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Adrian. Councillors, do you have any questions for our submitter? No, that being the case, thank you, Adrian, once again. And can you please turn off your camera and your microphone so that we can continue? Our next submission is from Graham Stott, who is unable to join us virtually due to poor internet connection up in the ranges. He has provided me with a copy of a statement that he would like me to read on his behalf. The following are his words in his submission. An application has been made to build a gin distillery, a manager's house and 6 accommodation units. The distilling process would seem to be quite involved and obviously requires a lot of experience. A distilled product such as gin not only has to be palatable, it also needs to be non-poisonous. If being produced by amateurs, it will take years of trial and error before a product suitable for human consumption will be available. On page 22 of the application, claim is made. The owners, quote, the owners have been growing and making gin in the Yarra Ranges and have relocated their plant and equipment, end quote. This obviously is not true, as on page 23, they claim to have started doing their research 4 years ago while on a camping trip, and all that I can see has been relocated are some trees that came in plant pots and a tractor. No sign of a distillery plant or equipment. He continues, all plants to grow and fruit successfully have a range of requirements. They can be soil type, altitude, rainfall, temperature, shade, full sun, but to name a few. The juniper trees would appear to be coming from regions of northern and eastern Europe, where they experience severe cold and can be snowbound for significant periods of winter. Whether the Strathbogie winters and climate are suitable for juniper trees is to be seen in years to come, as what the owners have embarked on is an experiment, in capitals. And as they have stated on page 24, quote, juniper trees have never been grown commercially anywhere in the world, end quote. And, quote, there is no data that we can find on yield per tree, end quote. It is therefore difficult to believe the claim that they can produce 1,000 litres of gin per week. He continues, my concern as a resident is not the growing of juniper trees or the prospect of somebody trying to distill gin. The concern for me is that the gin distillery and juniper trees are a smokescreen to disguise an application for a residential development in a farming zone. In my view, the clause within the state planning regulations that allow for an exemption to the one dwelling be 100-acre rule in a farm zone is being abused. If the applicants are serious about their agricultural enterprise, I would have no objection to them having a shared septic tank to facilitate a bathroom, laundry, and wishing them luck with their experiment. But it has not yet been demonstrated, in capital letters, that an intensive, livable agricultural enterprise is being pursued, and this application is for 7 dwellings, not just 1. My neighbour spent 12 years of hard work developing what he calls a truffery to produce truffles on a 20-acre block of land. He had to come from Lilydale every weekend to cut grass, water and prune the trees. He had to develop a farm plan, a financial plan with financial projections and demonstrate that it was a serious agricultural pursuit before he could obtain a planning permit for the 1 dwelling. Nobody objected to his application. The current applicants have done none of this. I asked the councillors to see through the facade and view this application for what it really is and reject it. We are not living or operating in an area that is zoned residential or rural living. This is a farm zone and we need to preserve it. All right, and that's Graham's submission. We can't ask any questions, obviously, of the submitter. So I'll move on to the next submission, our last submitter for this item, and they're the owners of the land, Wayne Kelly and Tess Scanlon. Welcome once again to you, and can you please turn on your camera and your microphone? You have 5 minutes to make your presentation. Sorry, is it Troy that's making the presentation?
Yeah, apologies. Tess and Wayne are present. However, I think my message to council was that I would speak, and Tess and Wayne are here for any questions also if it comes up during my discussion.
Yes, I think that's okay, Dawn. Yep, that's fine. Troy, would you like to make your presentation? You have 5 minutes to make it.
Thank you very much. Having been a town planner in local and state government and being involved in planning scheme amendments, including approving them at a state government level for the Minister for Planning for many years, there's certainly scope for things such as vineyards, wineries, cellar door sales, thoroughbred racing horse industry to establish themselves in the farming zone. None of them are food and fibre to the extent that are necessary. They're horse racing animals and they're also wine, which is alcohol. So the planning scheme, if you got to know the Strathbogie planning scheme very well, really encourages economic development to go down the path of encouraging vineyards and particularly cellar door sales and wineries, and also thoroughbred racehorses. So we're not talking about something that's completely different to these. We're talking about utilising a very small parcel of land that wouldn't be used for agriculture generally to go back to the water usage. It's not 37 litres, it's 3.7 litres of water to make 1 litre of gin. The berries aren't the same as berries on a fruit tree. They're cones. They're frost tolerant, drought tolerant. They rely on rainwater in a high rainfall area. There's no irrigation requirement for them. The only catchment that they may get is from the farm itself, of some additional tanks if that's needed during drought period. Other than that, there's also an LCA, Land Capability Assessment, that formed part of the planning application that shows how the wastewater is going to be treated. There are no ponds. It's a system that is not unlike what you will find in all new development, where the tank is treated and the water is reused in a location on the farm for watering plants, not the juniper trees, but other plants that have been incorporated into this. So there's a few misconceptions out there. The other thing I would say that that also needs to come up, I guess, is that there is actually a thing that came up about consulting with the community. We wanted to consult with the community. I actually contacted, and there's emails from me asking the planning department to invite me and our client to the meeting where they discussed it with the objectors. We have that recorded. We've actually asked more than once to do that. We never understood why we weren't part of the discussion period. I would have gladly got up, and I've done it many, many times, stand in a forum and answer questions for hours upon end if it meant getting to a better outcome for everyone. But that wasn't given to us in this situation. The application that we put forward may not have been robust in its entirety at the beginning, but we had so many meetings with council planners to talk to them about what would be suitable, what would be reasonable. We then spent 4.5 hours, Tess, Wayne, and myself, going through every objection. We wrote so many pages. I've got them here in front of me, so many pages. We itemised every single detail of every concern. There's been concerns that have come up today that aren't part of this. They're new concerns. In terms of the native animals have flourished more recently, probably because there's been such a change with new vegetation coming up. It's a great thing. Less people are cutting down vegetation. We can't have it all. If we're encouraging native animals to be here, we can't just change the way things are for agriculture. At the end of the day, the planning scheme, and I would stand at VCAT for this, the planning scheme allows land to be used in the farming zone for agriculture, horticulture. This is a horticultural proposal. The distillery is ancillary to it in that they're going to produce on the farm, not different to food and fibre, and they also would like to live there. I don't think that the accommodation was ever intended on being the big thing, and I still don't think it is. It's just a thing. And that's all I have to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Troy, for your presentation. Councillors, do you have any questions of clarification from either Troy, Wayne or Tess? Councillor Haysberg.
Okay, thanks. Bear with me, Troy. I've got a few questions.
Sure.
Just then, when you were talking about the wastewater, was that you're talking about the wastewater from distilling that'll be treated in tanks, or are you talking about like septic or sorry? I just want to.
Yeah, it's both. The actual wastewater from the units. The units are 2 people only, overnight stay. They're not dwellings.
Units. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. And that's the wastewater. It's not being stored. It's not, and also with the it's going into a treatment system where it'll rewater botanical plants and the like that they're going to grow on the property, native vegetation that they're going to plant. There's also wastewater from the distillery itself, which the EPA have strict guidelines on, and which the proposed conditions are dealing with that. They have to treat that in such a manner that it can't leave the property. And that's exactly the same as effluent disposal, cannot leave the property. If it leaves the property, they are in breach, and the EPA and the health department are involved.
Okay, thanks for that. Can I ask you now? Sorry, is it all right if I keep going?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Do you think that the aesthetic of the buildings will be in character with the landscape?
The initial thought about the building was the new, I guess, the look that goes with it's sort of the darker material, so that it's a very muted tone in terms of not sticking out, not being colourful or anything like that. The whole idea was to only keep it at a low scale with more windows, so that you could tell straight away that it was more a place to visit, but it doesn't dominate the entire property. It's not. I think people will be quite surprised with how small it's going to look on that block. And in terms of the landscaping that will occur as a result of having the car parking in front, I think that people are automatically going to see the building as they approach, and then they're going to see the car park, they're going to drive through it and then meander their way up to a nice building where people are sitting out the front. I don't think it's going to be, there was no intention to ever make it something more grand. It was really just so that people, it still had a presence, but it certainly wasn't going to be bulky or over the top. It was trying to actually follow the home that's down near the Friendly's Oval. It was really going down that path. Everyone's commented on how just nice, basic but nice and contemporary it was. And I think that's what they were trying to do with this.
So are the units made of reclaimed shipping containers? Is that?
That's not the case.
I don't know where I've heard this.
Yeah, shipping containers on their own are shipping containers, and they need a planning permit, even to be stored on someone's property. And if you wanted to turn them into a shed, they need a planning permit for a building in some instances, but they also need a building permit for them. In this instance, it's the design. The design is meant to not be all about these units. It's about the landscape. Mm-hmm. It's about the vegetation. It's about the farming area. These places are somewhere to be to sleep. They're not meant to be the main theme. So they are buildings in their own right that have been designed. Bruce McTeer, building designer, well-known designer in Shepparton, has designed them and the distillery building and the home.
Okay, thanks for that. And so where will the water for the units be bore water as well, or will there be tanks?
There is a bore on the site. However, it is anticipated that they'll try to be as sustainable as possible and use tank water for flushing toilets and the like. They won't, and for showering. That is the intention. And they are trying to, I think they will achieve it, be able to put them off the grid entirely.
Thanks for that. And so do you think there's a need to open? Yeah, I just want to understand why the applicant wants to open until 7 p.m.
Yeah, look, the main thing about 7 p.m, anyone who's investing the amount of money these people are investing in not just the distillery, but even the vegetation and growing them from scratch down in the Yarra Valley, bringing them up, planting them, babying them for a couple of years before they even get anywhere. It's a huge investment in time, money, effort, including the buildings that they're proposing. They're not going to do all this if it's not viable. The whole point, I guess, is that they are only doing it because it is a farm. It's a horticultural enterprise, and they need to make the time to have people come and visit extended as long as they can in order to capture enough income. I mean, it's not an overnight income from making money from cellar door sales. They will obviously have an opportunity to sell some of their produce away from the site, like most farmers. This is to be done in the interim, but to have something extended out to a nice dusk and people to sit out there and have up till 7 o'clock doesn't seem unreasonable when you think about a typical, most of us go out to cafes and things that aren't always in a town, in the township. They're out on farm or they're in rural areas, and you can be there till 10 or 11 at night. I don't think it's a big ask for 7.
Thanks. And just one last question. So how much processing of the gin will actually take place on site? Because I know sort of other boutique gin distilleries kind of, they buy in a base gin, a base spirit, and then distill with the juniper berries to create the gin, like gin flavour. So is that what will happen?
No, it's 100% to be manufactured on site. All the distilling everything they sell will be from the site. There will be nothing brought in other than occasionally the malt, the barley that they may need also, but the rest of it, all the juniper berries and the like, and that will occur. I mean, I've been to Nagambie out the front of the brewery there in the main street and high street, and I've seen 3 or 4 containers show up with the gin that you're talking about, or the liquor that you're talking about. It comes in there every week or every fortnight, and they use that. That's not going to occur in this instance.
Okay, thanks for answering all my questions, Troy.
No worries.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors, are there anyone else who has questions? Councillor Dickinson.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Roy, my question relates to the accommodation. I get the impression that it's almost like a secondary issue, the way you speak. You can correct me if I'm wrong there, but I just wonder why the accommodation area 1 is so far away from the other buildings. Why isn't it located closer to area 2, where it could all become one area?
Oh, probably more so for privacy, or give people that sense of, visiting a place and having their own space. They've probably come from a place that's built up and they're wanting a bit more of a rural experience, a farm experience. Probably the biggest thing that we heard, particularly when I was even talking and speaking with people, business owners, in the recent economic development meeting in Euroa, the theme came up, the issue came up on nearly every table, I think, where host farm accommodation was so lacking, and it's probably our best industry that we're not utilising. So it's not completely out of character. It's probably more that people are hearing that they want to have an experience, whether or not it needs to be completely in the wilderness or way out where no one can see them or not. I think that because it's only 30-acre property, they're just trying to get a little bit more space between them. I think that's the only reason.
So just following on from that, how do you think the applicants would feel about putting the accommodation all into one area?
I think that our clients, Tess and Wayne, are listening in at the moment. I think that if it's okay, they might like to speak to that. But I've spoken to them about it before, and I don't think they're hell-bent on having one thing if no one wants it. But if it's something that's only changing it for the sake of a reason that's not really justified, then I think they would like to keep it the way it is. So would you like to ask them?
Yes, please.
Yep. No. Are you Tess and Wayne, are you there?
Yes. Can you hear us?
We can hear you.
Can you see us?
No, we can't see. Well, I can't see you, but others can. So that's okay.
No, we can't see you, but
I might close out, and then I'll close out for a moment. I bet you they'll see you.
Can you see us? Yeah.
Yes, we can. Thank you, Tess and Wayne. If you would like to answer the question from Councillor Dickinson. Councillor Dickinson, do you want to repeat your question?
Did you hear my question, Tess and Wayne?
Yes, I did. Oh, yes, we did. To address that question, both Wayne and I, we've both grown up in country and rural Queensland. And for myself, if I go to visit somewhere for an experience, I don't want to be on top of where the actual, for our instance, gin is being produced. I don't want to be sitting on top of that facility. I'd like to be able to have my space. That's from my own personal experience. And I think that the experience that we're trying to create is one where when they come to the accommodation facility, is that they can meander through all the native botanicals that we've planted, so that it becomes that it sort of envelops the experience for them to then see all the botanicals on their way to the distillery, so that they can see what botanicals that we actually are using in the production of our gin. And I guess our biggest factor is that we wanted to be 100% Australian gin. And currently, no gin is completely 100% Australian because they don't produce their own juniper berries. So as far as privacy and peace and quiet, that's why we were opting to have separate the residential and the business and the management quarters.
Thank you, Tess and Wayne. 2 residential areas.
Sorry?
There are 2 residential areas?
The accommodation.
Sorry. Accommodation areas, sorry.
Sorry. So the accommodation and residential. So being able to separate those, and obviously being able to, if you're actually managing the place, working on the place, you want to be able to have an area where you can actually withdraw yourself as well. So you're not actually 100% there, working, 24/7, even though we will be, but be able to differentiate between business and home as well.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I continue, Mayor?
Yeah, Councillor Dickinson, have you got a further question?
It relates to the same question.
Yes, you may ask it, yeah.
Thank you. I'm not sure that I'm making myself clear on the question. There are 2 accommodation areas quite apart from each other, one over near Beatties Road and the other right near the distillery. I'm wondering why the one over near Beatties Road is so far away from the other one and from the distillery, and would you, how would you feel about having the accommodation in one area, right within the distillery area?
So if we're to, so the two units that you're talking about, two areas. So if we were to move the one that's closest to the distillery near the ones that were up closer to Beatty's Road, so that they're all in one area, is that what you're?
No, other way around.
Right.
The Beatty's Road one back towards the distillery. So area 1 move over to area 2.
Right. And in terms of the with the layout, with the units that are up near Beatty's Road, we're looking at the view that those units would be getting as well. Whereas the other units, obviously they would have a completely different outlook and don't actually, at this point, we're still trying to decide which way to orientate them in terms of optimising the view.
Okay, thank you. So it's all about aesthetics and view.
That's correct, for the patrons that come, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Are there any further questions, councillors, of the submitters? Councillor Hourigan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thanks, Tess and Wayne, for coming to speak tonight. I just want to clarify, there is accommodation 1, accommodation 2, the distillery, a house, and also a manager's quarters that's separated from the house, not connected, or is connected to the house, or is the house?
It is the house. Manager's
okay.
Is the house.
I thought that's what I read, and then I got confused when you said they needed to get away a little bit, and I thought, oh, anyway, thank you.
No.
Thank you, Councillor Hourigan. Are there any further questions of the submitters? No, in that case, thank you, Tess and Wayne and Troy. Could you please turn off your camera and your microphone now? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, that's the end of the submission process to this item. Can I ask you please to put forward a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Rayburn.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation as printed on page 115 of our agenda this evening, with a minor alteration to item in the conditions number 17, which is signage. Prior to the commencement of the uses and development, roadside signage is to be erected to the satisfaction of the responsible authority, directing road users to the location of the facility and the need to slow and be aware of turning vehicles. That's what I'd like to move. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Can I have a seconder to that motion? Councillor Hourigan is a seconder. We have a motion now that that the recommendation be adopted and an amendment that in front of us. We have a mover and a seconder. Would the mover like to speak to the motion now?
Yes, I would. Thanks.
Oh, can I?
a question from Councillor Haysberg.
Can I ask if the mover and seconder would accept a slight amendment to the opening hours to make them till 5 o'clock rather than 7?
To be very honest, Councillor Haysberg, after listening to Carol before when she was talking about wildlife, 5 o'clock is actually up there between March and September is right on when all the wildlife's coming out. So to me, no. If that's my
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. So as that is not acceptable to the mover of the motion, does Councillor Haysberg wish to foreshadow an amendment?
Well, I just would like to, I guess, answer the concerns of the objectors and make an earlier sort of closing time, but I don't think that's palatable to the mover and seconder, so I'll just leave it there.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Haysberg. So we'll go back to Councillor Rayburn. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. This one has caused a lot of angst and unnecessary angst, I believe, up in the community of Strathbogie and Kithbrook. To me, this is just an ordinary development of a farming zone property. It's just like a wheat farmer or a barley farmer also putting a distillery business on their farm. The comment was made last week or the week before in our comments in our objections that the trees are flammable. You grow a wheat crop or a barley crop and you harvest that, that's inflammable too. So when we're talking about farming development, and something we've been talking about a lot as new councillors, is that farming can be very intensive on a very small area. And we were talking about this over near Ngambie in reference to an old school block where someone could build a piggery or a chicken farm right next to where the house was going to be built. This is something which we can have control of. We understand what's going on here, and I believe it will be a benefit and will help people in the future. With the traffic issue, when people were talking about people going to stay down in Euroa or somewhere else, I think sometimes it's good to have facilities where you can actually stay after you've enjoyed your day at the tasting. So you're not under the influence of alcohol when you leave the building. So to me, I think it's a win-win in all ways. So that's my comments.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Would the seconder wish to speak now, or Councillor Horrigan, would you wish to reserve your right?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'd like to speak now, if I can.
Go ahead.
So I would like to thank all the objectors for coming tonight to speak to us. And the ones that couldn't make it, I have read through all your objections, and thank you also to those that were in support. This is I'm very confident in our planners that they have spent a lot of time on this application to really try and address all the concerns that we have spoken about tonight. And I also like to acknowledge that the applicants also were reading, through the objections, and they have made some changes. And I would suggest significant changes in their business, in their operation, to really try and work with their community. By the reduction of the wedding venue, they listened to their neighbours about the amenity of the area, and by the reduction of the restaurant, they were really taking into account the objectors. I think 7 p.m. is a reasonable time for noise. In regards to the accommodation side, we know that we're in desperate need of short-term accommodation around the area, and we know that there's a rise of the Airbnbs where people are renting out their homes. The effect of homes, etc., being rented out is contributing to the crisis, to the housing crisis. So when we have more development of short-term accommodation, we're also helping with that housing crisis, because it's developing more business competition for that area. I also agree that, if you're going to go to a gin distillery, it is nice to know that there is an accommodation facility there so that it does or can limit the drink driving. In regards to the juniper berries, they can be grown there whether or not we approve this distillery, and that's their right of farming. And so I think, regardless of that, they can still participate in that cause. I did also want to talk about what Troy did touch on, is that I did attend to the economic strategy, and there has been a lot of talk about increasing farming accommodation for the short-term use, and there is actually 2 shires at the moment that are trialling it by removing the planning permits to help in that, which I think is a really great way to go. Also in the report, there is an agreement, I believe, with the applicants that should this not be developed into the distillery, there's a 173 agreement, and it does say that they will have to remove the dwelling, I believe. Manager Tingay, I'm looking at you for a nod there. I'll go to the 173 agreement that's on there, which I think has, which I think addresses a lot of the concerns as well. There is a number of conditions on the permit to control the uses and development, including the conditioning of operating hours, number of patrons, and other amenity controls. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. I'd now call on a speaker against the motion. So if there's no speaker against the motion, can I call for a further speaker in favour of the motion? Councillor Hayes-Burke.
Thanks, Councillor Murray. Despite what Councillor Rayburn said, I did find this really tricky because I did think that the objectors had some real concerns. But overall, I couldn't see any planning grounds to refuse this application. And I did thoroughly consider all the objections, as I said. I think overall there will be a net benefit to the community and to the local economy. And I think that this is a really positive business pursuit. I would have liked to, I guess, have seen a reduction in the opening hours just for safety on the roads and for the wildlife aspect. I do think it's good that Councillor Ayburn's noted that there'll be some additional signage on the roads. In relation to the water runoff and potentially contaminating the water source, the conditions 27 and 28 are the Golden Murray water conditions, and they are there in response to any runoff, and they do hopefully alleviate concerns of the objectors around water usage. So yeah, that's really all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Is there any other speaker either for or against the motion? That being the case, can I ask the mover if they wish to reply?
No, that's okay, thanks.
So if the mover doesn't wish to speak, can I put the motion? I'll put the motion with the amendment that which has become the motion in total. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. Director Bray, could you please request the Mayor to return to the meeting to resume the chair? Thank you.
Hello. Thank you, Director Dr. Bray, for letting me know I would like to come back in, and thank you, Deputy Mayor Murray, for continuing the meeting in my absence. Okay, we're now going to move on to page 123 of our agenda, which is item 9.1.7, planning applications received and planning applications determined from the 1 to the 30th of June 2022. Director Tingay, can we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. As you alluded to, page 132 of the agenda is where it is noted that there were 24 new planning permit applications received and 11 planning permit applications decided upon during the reporting period, that being the 1st to the 30th of June 2022. A mixture of applications were received during this reporting period, including a number of applications for dwellings and residential subdivisions. The recommendation is on page 132 for Council's consideration. Thank you, Mayor Binks.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, are there any questions of clarifications relating to this report? No? Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Rayburn?
Yes, Mayor, yes, not Deputy Mayor at the moment. Yes, page 132, the recommendation on page 132, the Council note that the 24 new planning applications received and 11 planning permits applications being decided. I'd move that way.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Dickinson. Councillor Rayburn, would you like to speak to the motion? No. Councillor Dickinson?
No.
No. Would any other councillor like to speak in favour or against the motion? No. Okay, councillors, I shall put the motion to the vote. Can I see a show of hands for all those in favour, please? And against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. We're now moving to page 138 of the agenda, item 9.2.1, the Australian Rail Track Corporation, ARTC, Advocacy. Director Tingay, can we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. This report seeks to write to the relevant ARTC representatives and state government ministers to urge the ARTC to provide an exact timeframe as to when the preferred option for the Euroa solution will be announced. The most recent consultation commenced at the end of September 2021, where 2 design options were presented to the community for feedback. The options were a road overpass and a road underpass. The ARTC have indicated that they are continuing to work through the process of assessing the options for the Euroa solution. As soon as they have completed their assessment and have the relevant approvals, the preferred option for Euroa will be shared. It was originally intended that that outcome would be received to the community by mid-2022, but to date, no information has been received. There is a recommendation on page 138 for Council's consideration. Thank you, Mayor Binks.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, do we have any questions of clarification for Director Tingay regarding this item? Councillor Hayes-Burke.
When was the last time we actually heard from ARTC in relation to this project?
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. There was some recent communication in June from ARTC, and that indicated that the ARCT are continuing to work through the process of assessing the options for a road underpass and a road overpass. And as soon as they have completed their assessment and have the appropriate approvals, the preferred option for Euroa will be shared.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Was there any further questions of clarification? No. Councillors, can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Hayes-Burke.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I'd like to move the motion on page 138 of the agenda. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Rayburn. Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Hayes-Burke?
Yeah, I'd just firstly like to thank the officers for taking the initiative and yourself as Mayor taking the initiative to write to these ministers and the representatives from AITC, because as the community knows, AITC has gone completely quiet, and I think it's really important that we do this to continue our advocacy work for the community. I know the Euro Connect group, which we met with a couple of weeks ago, have been strongly pushing AITC and Department of Transport for some answers, but they seem to be just as much in the dark as council. So I really hope we can get some information from AITC around timelines for the project. And yeah, I just think it's really important that we continue to push through this campaign.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Councillor Rayburn, would you like to speak to the motion or reserve your right?
No, I'll speak if you like now. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you.
I think this is very pointed position we hold here, is because going into a state election and also, you know, your ability to be able to communicate with a wide number of political spheres, one might say, on all different sides of the political fence, that we show that we are still there trying to get something to succeed for us in Euroa, and this just highlights it, that we are still very much on the front foot, trying to be the proactive person, not the reactive.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Would any other councillor like to speak against the motion or for the motion? Would any councillor like to speak for the motion? Yes, thanks. Councillor Murray.
Yeah, I'd just like to support what Councillor Hayes-Burke and Councillor Rayburn were saying. It's good to get on the front foot, I think, and be proactive. There's obviously a bit of concern in the community that somebody's got cold feet, or that decision makers are really trying to vacillate and not sort of make a decision on this with elections coming up and a new government federally. So we need to push for a decision, and we need to push for the community's wishes to be honoured in this regard. And I support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No. Okay, councillors. Councillor Hayes-Burke, did you want your right to reply? No, oh, good, thanks. Councillors, I'll put the motion to the vote. Can I see a show of hands for all those in favour, please? Against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. We now move to page 142 of the agenda, item 9.2.2, Mangalore Freight Intermodal Advocacy. Director Tingay, may we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. In late 2019, Strathbogie Shire successfully applied for funding to prepare a business case for the construction of a freight intermodal at Mangalore Airport. Ernst & Young were appointed to assist in the preparation of this case. The project requires that the business case achieve passage through 5 gateways. In 2020, Ernst & Young submitted the project to Gateway 2. The project appears to have stalled, and council officers were verbally advised by the Department of Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Communications that the project may not proceed due to insufficient demand analysis for the site being obtained. The previous coalition government did not confirm the status of the business case prior to the federal election, and to date the matter remains in limbo. This report seeks to continue to undertake advocacy on the possibility of a freight intermodal at Mangalore. There is a recommendation on page 143 for council's consideration. Thank you, Mayor Binks.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification for Director Tingay? Yes, Councillor Hayes-Burke.
Thanks, Mayor Binks. Sorry, this is just probably for my ignorance. But with that business case, was that so was council overseeing the employment of the consultants, Ernst & Young, to do the business case, or was their employment overseen by the federal government? Because we got the funding to do the business case, didn't we? I'm just clarifying.
No, that's correct. Oh, stalled. I'm back. That's correct, Councillor Haysberg.
So we oversaw the business case.
No.
Okay.
The federal government did.
But so why did we get the funding then?
We applied for through the Inland Rail Interface Improvement Program for that construction, but the process being a federal project is managed by the federal government, not by council. But we submitted an application for Mangalore to be a possibility and to be considered.
Oh, I see. Sorry, it's a much larger project than just Mangalore.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I totally get it now. Thank you.
That's okay.
Are there any further questions or clarifications for the Director? No? Okay, councillors. Can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Rayburn.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation, which is printed on page 143, that council, as a matter of priority, reactivate its advocacy campaign for the continued development of the business case for the freight intermodal at Mangalore. I think this is an urgent one, so yep.
Thank you. Councillors, is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Horrigan? Councillor Rayburn, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I would love to. This is an issue which I was following up last year with the coalition government and as mayor, and yes, it did fall on deaf ears then. And what really does worry me is that we've been making a large investment in the state of Victoria at the WIF and the BIF, which is the Western Intermodal Freight Terminal out at Truganini, and also the BIF, which is the Beveridge Intermodal Freight Terminal. And we're not looking after the northeastern area of Victoria, which is the food bowl of the state. And this development on Mangalore could encompass the three forms of transport: rail, air, and road. And that, to me, is something major that we are lacking in Australia. And once we get back talking to China again, I think this will become a major area where we can really develop this Mangalore airport into sending all our commodity overseas via air, but also moving it from interstate into Mangalore to be transported out. And I think it's a great idea.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Councillor Horrigan, would you like to speak to your motion, or alternatively reserve your right to speak?
I'm glad that we have reactivated this advocacy project, and there's not much more about how important this is. I think you covered absolutely everything. Sorry, I thought I heard someone talk.
No, you did. I'll just get you to repeat it. You're just cutting in and out a little bit. So if you can just repeat what you said, please.
Thanks, Mayor Binks. I just support everything that Councillor Rayburn has said. It's a very important project that we really need to keep putting in front of the government. We're really pushing for it. So yes, I'm really glad that we're doing this advocacy again.
Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. Did any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Any other councillor like to speak in favour of the motion? No. Okay, councillors, I shall put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands for all those in favour, please? And against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, Councillor Now moving to page 147 of the agenda, item 9.3.1, contract variation, contract number 2021-65, Harris Creek Road, Bonnie Doon Roads, intersection realignment. Acting Director Rowley, may we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Briggs. In reference to contract 2021-65, Harris Creek Road, Bonnie Doon Road intersection project forms part of the Council 21-22 Capital Works program. The project primarily required to improve road safety at the intersection. At the April 2021 Council meeting, Council approved the awarded contract number 2021-65 for the Harris Creek Road, Bonnie Doon Road intersection realignment to Wright's earth moving. After emerging as the preferred tenderer following a competitive tender process, the lump sum contract was subsequently awarded for a total sum of $320,469 plus GST. The contract has not been signed and thus the works have not commenced owing to delays which arose from obtaining approval. A set of trees impacted works. Council eventually obtained the permit to remove the trees on the 20th of April 2022. Since obtaining the tree permit, Wright's Earth Moving have been contacted with the view of finalising the contract agreement to commence works. However, they expressed their preference to commence at the beginning of September, which we've agreed to when the weather becomes more favourable for construction. In addition, Wright's Earth Moving would like only to accept and undertake the works upon Council accepting the revised tender price, considering the time lapse between tendering and construction. They've also expressed their preference to provide a revised tender price close to the commencement of works in the view of prevailing volatile construction material price increases. Harris Creek Bonnie Doon Road intersection works has a budget allocation of $400,000 in the current financial year.
Thank you, Acting Director Rowley. Councillors, are there any questions or clarification for the officer? No. Councillors, can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Rayburn.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'd like to move the recommendation, which is printed on page 147. The council authorised council officers to receive and revised tender price for the contract and give a mandate to the council officers to negotiate the revised tender price. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Murray. Councillor Rayburn, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, this is one of the most urgent intersections we need to be fixed up in the Strathbogie Ranges, up at Marrawini. It's a very dangerous intersection. And once we get this, it'll be help the road users and the bike riders. They're one of the ones that are actually stating they need this upgraded because they need to be able to, for them to have safety on this intersection. So I think this is an absolute need, and I think it's going to be great for the whole community who utilise Harris Creek Road and Bonnie Doon Road.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Councillor Murray, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No. Okay, councillors, I'll put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands for all those in favour, please? And against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. We now move to page 152 of the agenda, item 9.3.2, tender for contract number 21-22-23, rehabilitation of the Violet Town landfill, construction works. Acting Director Rowley, may we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Briggs. In reference to contract 21-22-23, Violet Town landfill rehabilitation construction works, Council was undertaking a competitive tender process for the rehabilitation of the Violet Town landfill construction works. This landfill commenced its operations prior to 1960 and ceased accepting municipal waste in 2010. The EPA environmental licence, which allowed this two-cell site to receive gratuitous waste, asbestos waste and domestic origin solid inert waste, and shredded automotive tyres was surrendered in 2019 as part of the EPA licence and its compliance with the post-closure pollution abatement notice CPC PAN. Council is required to construct and combine capping of two cells. Council engaged Coffee Service Australia P2ILT for the capping design. The completed design was approved by the Design Verification Authority and the EPA. The public tender process for the Violet Town landfill rehabilitation works has been undertaken to meet Council's compliance requirements under Council procurement policy. This project is required to completely rehabilitate the Violet Town landfill to ensure that we protect future generations and meet our obligation to the EPA. This project forms part of the Council adopted capital works program in the financial year of 2022-23. Through public advertising in local and national newspaper, Council invited tenders for the works to undertake contract 21-22-23 at the close of tender on June 2022. 3 tenders submitted tender compliant with specifications. 1 tender was submitted an alternative tender which from the EPA approved design and would require a minor variation approved by the EPA auditor. The alternative tender was considered and subsequently discounted. The tenders have been assessed and evaluated by Council officers. Having considered the result of the evaluation, is to recommend that Council award the tender for the contract number 2022-23 Violet Town landfill construction works to Apex Earthworks Pty Ltd for a total amount of $2,151,946.50, including GST. Thank you, Mayor Biggs.
Thank you, Acting Director Rowley. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification for the officers? Councillor Murray.
Acting Director, this is a significant saving for our budget, so isn't it? So I think everybody would be pleased about this.
Councillor Murray, yes, there has been a significant saving in the initial estimate costings against this. The officers have done some great work working with the external consultants to be able to achieve this great outcome.
Thank you.
Councillor Rayburn.
Yeah, just following up from what Councillor Murray just asked, could you, Acting Director Rowley, can you explain what the reason why the tender and what changes have come about from the EPA in reference to this site?
Through you, Councillor Rayburn, if I may refer to Officer Molly Olgers, who is looking after this project. She may wish to answer that, if that is fine with you, Mayor Briggs.
That's fine, thank you, Molly. Would Officer Olgers, would you be willing to answer that question, please?
Thank you, through Mayor. So originally all landfills in Victoria are classified as type 2, which has a geocomposite liner layer that needs to be incorporated as part of the design. Due to some work that had been done previously by council staff, around the landfill gas risk on site, we were able to prove to the EPA that actually the Violet Town landfill could be classed as a type 3 low risk rural landfill, which meant we had a lower construction standard required, which has led to the reduction in the costs.
Thank you, Coordinator Olgers. Councillor Haysbert, I saw your hand go up earlier. Did you have a question for clarification?
Mine was around the same what was discussed. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, councillors, were there any further? Councillor Rayburn, yes.
Just if I may ask Officer Olgers, what's the length of the construction time so the community of Violet Town and the surrounding area understand what the construction time and how long it will take?
At this stage, the works are scheduled to take 12 weeks. That's assuming that we have no construction delays during that process. We're hoping that they will begin in September, which is the optimal time to begin landfill construction works, because we need to have a certain level of permeability and water in the soils to ensure the cap is built to the specific compaction requirements. They will go for 12 weeks, and the Violet Town transfer station will remain open during this time.
Thank you, Officer Odgers, for that clarification. Was there anything further that councillors would like to clarify with either Acting Director Rowley or Officer Odgers? No? Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Rayburn.
Thank you, Mayor. God. Half the meeting I didn't say a word, the rest of the half I haven't shut up. What I'd like to say is I'd like to move the recommendation printed on page 152 that receives and notes the outcome of the tender assessment process, and also 2, award the tender, 3, authorise officers, and 4, authorise the Chief Executive Officer to execute the contract by signing and affixing the common seal of the Strathbogie Shire Council. I move such way.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Haysbrook. Councillor Rayburn, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, this is something that has been sitting on the books of this Shire for a number of years. We originally thought we had it all sealed and capped, I should say, back in 2016 or 14. Well, clarify. I think it was about 2014, but the EPA have said that we have to recap it. We were very, very worried, and as council laws, that this was going to cost us around a $5 million project. But due to our good, diligent staff, that we are now reducing it down to about 2.5, because there'll be other remedial work to go on. So this is a good outcome for our community, outcome for our Shire, and outcome for the whole community of the Shire.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Councillor Haysbrook, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, just following on from that, thanks. Yeah, this is a project that has a very long hangover for the Shire, and it's something that we really don't have a choice to do. We have these requirements from the EPA, and in order to undertake the project, we were going to have to borrow significant funds to do so. But yes, as Councillor Rayburn stated, it's come in well under the amount we'd budgeted to borrow. I note that the company Apex Earthworks has very good environmental credentials, so that's suitable for this project. And they're a company within the local area. And also that as part of this project and part of the tender, they are required to cover the site in plantings as well. So that will hopefully increase the biodiversity in the area, which now the site's pretty arid looking. And also just thanks to Molly for all her work on this project. I mean, I know it's been really intense for her the last couple of months getting all this to council. So thanks, Molly and the team.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbrook. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Murray.
Can I just also mention that I think this project will significantly reduce the Shire's carbon footprint in the environment. So I think it's a great outcome really for us, and something which we need to do for future generations moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to the item? No. Okay, councillors, I shall put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands for all those in favour, please? And against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. We're now moving to page 160 of the agenda, 9.3.3, contract variation, contract number 2022-05, Major Culverts Renewal Program. Acting Director Rowley, may we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Briggs. Reference to contract 2021-05, the Culverts Renewal Program was part of Council's 21-22 Capital Works Program. The project is primarily required to address maintenance needs and general improvement of safety on council roads. The 2021 Major Culverts Renewal Program comprises of culverts replacement in 4 locations in council roads, were prioritised based on outcomes with third-party road condition assessment undertaken on behalf of council. At the 19th of the 10th 21 council meeting, council approved the award contract CN 212205 for the Culvert Renewal Program to Macca Civil Pty Ltd after merging as the preferred tender following a competitive tender process. A lump sum contract was awarded for $263,752 plus GST. The contractor has completed over 70% of the works when this report was written. It is now 95% completed of works at the time of submitting this report. As works progress, the growing issue of construction material scrutiny forced a change to the specification of culvert material, resulting in an attendant rise in project costs. Consequently, the impact of the rising costs due to changes made the culvert specifications put the project at risk, thus necessitating a downward scope reviewing of reducing works to 3 locations remaining within the budget. The additional latent conditions not anticipated at Zanelli Road, Nagambie and Dragalong Road, Nagambie have added to the cost of the delivery of the project to these 3 locations. It has therefore become necessary to vary a contract awarded to necessarily complete the project. The variation in the works is $37,247.65 GST inclusive, bringing the total contract cost to $300,999.65 plus GST if approved. The increases can be accommodated from the 2021 Capital Works budget. Thank you, Mayor Briggs.
Thank you, Acting Director Rowley. Councillors, are there any questions for Acting Director Rowley? No? Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Rayburn.
Move the recommendation as printed on page 160 be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Murray? Councillor Rayburn, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thanks.
Councillor Murray, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No? Okay, councillors, I shall put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands for all those in favour, please? And against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. We now move to page 165 of the agenda. Excuse me. Contract variation. Contract number 2021 to 22-45. Streetscape Renewal Program, Euroa. Acting Director Rowley, can we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Briggs. In reference to contract number 2122-45, at the council meeting in March, council approved the recommendation to proceed with stage 1 works of the Streetscape Renewal Program for Euroa. Following the decision, Euroa Streetscape Works contract number 2122-45 was awarded to Quayle Lawn and Garden Proprietary Limited for a total sum of $196,883.50 inclusive of GST. Contract number 2122-45 was fully executed on the 5th of April 2020, and Quayle Lawn and Garden Proprietary Limited have already commenced works, having completed over 50% of the works of the project by March 2020. However, community safety, best value concerns and other unforeseen conditions at the streetscape work area have necessitated additional works which are considered necessary to successfully complete the program. Total project cost, including the proposed cost variation of $76,598.50 would become $273,482 GST inclusive if approved. The new contract value would still be within the $283,000 budget allocated for the Euroa Streetscape program for the financial year of 21-22. Having considered these, it is hereby recommended that Council, as the follow, proceed. Thank you, Councillor Mayor Briggs.
Thank you, Acting Director Rowley. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification for the officer? Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor, and Acting Director Rowley. I see the increase in the initial tender prices about 40%, 38%, I believe. Is that correct?
Correct.
What checks and balances do the council have in place to ensure that's a reasonable addition to the contract as such, please?
When we go out to tender on these, we go out with a cost summary, and we get a cost summary and a tender submission, and they break down the cost of materials and works that are undertaken on these jobs. We scrutinise that very carefully. When they will come back to us variation, they have to refer back to the tender breakdowns, the tender costs. They cannot increase the costs above those that are stipulated within the contract. They must work within those costs.
Thank you, Acting Director Rowley. Councillor Murray, did you have a question for clarification?
Yes, please, Mayor. I just wanted to ask Acting Director Rowley. I understand that this money was the result of a grant application that we made, or that was given to us. What impact is this going to have on our budget?
If we don't proceed, then we hand the money back. That is the impact on the budget. That's basically what it will be. We must proceed, complete the works.
So, Acting Director, it did come from a grant? What was the grant?
Correct, it did come from a grant. The grant was sorry, I don't have that in front of me. Sorry.
CEO Solomon will have the information. Thank you, Acting Director Rowley.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. This grant was from a federal government grant under community infrastructure, and we had an approved project allocation of $650,000 towards streetscape renewals. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, CEO Solomon. Councillor Murray, does that answer your question or clarification?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Were there any further questions for clarification? No? Okay. Councillors, can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Horrigan.
Thank you, Mayor Binks. I would like to move a motion that we adopt the recommendation on page 165 of the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Rayburn, thank you. Councillor Horrigan, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor Binks. I think Manager Rowley, Bruce, he gave a very good explanation on the extra costs within this project, and quite frankly, correct. If we don't equip this money in this project, then we have to give it back. And you know, we've gone to all this hard work. I have read and had a look about where the money is to be allocated in this particular setting. And I do honestly believe that the contractors would have struggled to be able to foresee that particular works. And I do know that they ripped up a lot of road and they ripped up a lot of concrete, and then issues came about. And unfortunately, completing a renovation project myself, that's what's happening this day and age. So budgets blow out, and it makes much more sense to rectify it now than to rectify it in stage 2 and rip up the concrete we've just laid to rectify it and then relay it. So I'm very satisfied that this is definitely warranted in this case. Thanks, Mayor Binks.
Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. Councillor Rayburn, would you like to speak to the motion? No. Would any other councillor like to speak in the motion? No. Okay, councillors, I shall put the motion to a vote. Can I get a show of hands for all those in favour, please? And against? and I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. We now move to page 170 of the agenda, item 9.4.1, advocacy for regional waste collaboration. Acting Director Rowley, can we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Briggs. In reference to the advocacy for the regional waste collaboration, in 2014, the state government established a series of regional waste and resource recovery groups. The regional waste and resource recovery groups serve an important structure for regional collaboration between local governments, including delivery effective services, achieving efficiency of scale, sharing expertise, advocating for better policy and legislation, education and procurement. Strathbogie Shire Council sits with the Golden Valley Waste and Resource Recovery Group area within Campaspe, Greater Shepparton, Mitchell, Moira and Murrindindi councils. As part of the suite of changes occurring in the waste space and driven by state government, the regional waste and resource recovery groups will be dissolved on the 1st of July 2022 and replaced with a central authority called Recycling Victoria. There are concerns among regional councils that there is currently no concrete information on the ongoing mechanism that will serve a similar structure once the groups are dissolved. At the time of this report was written, there have been no concrete plans from the state government on what the structure of the regional facilitation will be, and waste staff from the GVWRRG councils are concerned that the regional perspective and focus will be lost by the body that is based in metropolitan Melbourne. This report recommends advocating to the state government for more clarity about the role and voice of regional councils, Recycling Victoria, and seek to nominate a councillor representative to advocate with other Golden Valley region councils. Thank you, Mayor Briggs.
Thank you, Councillor. Acting Director Rowley. It's been a long day. Councillors, were there any questions or clarification for Director Rowley regarding this? No? Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Murray?
Thank you, Mayor. Can I please move the motion as listed on page 170 and continued on 171? And can I also include Councillor Hayes-Burke as the appointed representative for the Shire? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Do I need to, Councillor Hayes-Burke, do you accept the nomination? Yes, great. Excellent. Do I have a seconder for the motion, please? Councillor Horrigan, thank you. Councillor Murray, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, I think it's important that we have a representative on this group, considering that we had a strong regional voice and that regional voice has been changed to a sort of a all-encompassing Victorian one, which probably will be dominated by urban councils. I think it's important that we have a voice in that changeover period, and I think Councillor Hayes-Burke is an ideal candidate for that position, with her interest and so on in that sort of area, and I think she'll serve us well on that group. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Horrigan, would you like to speak to the motion? Okay. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Hayes-Burke.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I'll happily accept this sort of temporary this appointment, I guess you could say. I think it's some really important advocacy work because there's been next to no information from the state government about the transition to the circular economy policy and the move to Recycling Victoria, which is to be the statutory body that's supposed to provide statewide leadership and oversight to all councils regarding waste and recycling. Regional councils do have unique needs, and we want to make sure that they're met by the government's transition. We did hear early on from the Minister of Energy and Environment that as part of this transition, the government intends to establish local government advisory committees, but we haven't heard anything since. And these advisory committees are essential to ensuring the needs of regional communities, and they'll also ensure some continuity and act as a conduit back to councils, between councils and Recycling Victoria, Furthermore, I think they provide officers, because officers will hopefully also attend these advisory groups. They provide officers with another working group of officers from other regional councils so that they can achieve the state outcomes together. So, yeah, I think it's really important.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No? Okay, councillors, I shall put the motion to a vote. Can I get a show of hands for all those in favour, please? And against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. Now on to page 175 of the agenda, item 9.5.1, update of Instrument of Delegation S5, Council to the Chief Executive Officer, Director Bray. Can we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. Councillors, as you're aware, there are a lot of decisions that are being made under legislation day to day, and the way that we handle this efficiently is to have a series of delegation instruments. The key one that Council actually delegates its power to through the CEO is this instrument S5. It was, the existing instrument was adopted by Council on the 18th of August in 2020. And so we really need to just have a review and a refresh of the delegations, given that it's been a couple of years since that has been approved. There are a few things that are set out in the Local Government Act that a CEO cannot do. So a CEO cannot do things like amend the council plan, adopt policies that legislation require a council resolution, and borrowing funds, and expending money outside a budget that is beyond the limits that are set out in the delegation instrument. So we've done a bit of a review, and back in August 2020, we didn't have the ministerial guidelines that this meeting is operating under at the moment. We did some preemptive delegations just as an emergency, just in case we were in lockdown or a lot of the council got sick and we couldn't have a quorum. So those powers were never enacted by the CEO. So we're proposing that they actually be deleted because they haven't been used and we don't need them, given that we are now holding legal virtual meetings. And there's also been another couple of changes in terms of just reflecting inflation, and things like a $150,000 limit for goods and services has been increased by about $20,000 just to reflect inflation. And also just putting in a provision around short-term investment for funds, which would then be reported through the Audit and Risk Committee. So, councillors, it's really just updating things, having a refresh and getting rid of some provisions that haven't been enacted. I suppose the other important thing to say is that just because powers are delegated to the CEO and in turn through to officers, it doesn't mean that those powers are always used. So if you look at a lot of the items that are on the agenda tonight, technically some of those decisions could be made by the CEO, but obviously because of the community interest and the strategic interest, and also reflecting council's strategic role in making strategic decisions, they come up to council. So it's just because a power is delegated, it doesn't mean that it's always been used. So councillors, on page 175 and 176, there's a recommendation which is a little bit legalistic because it is a legal instrument, is to really just adopt the amended instrument in front of you, and noting that we need to affix the common seal, and also upon that being signed and sealed, the existing delegations are revoked. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Director Bray. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification for the officer? No. Director Bray, I just want to point out that in the agenda we've also included the existing delegations, and I know this has been a request from community to see what it is that we're replacing, because often these documents aren't always included. So I really thank you and the team for including those ones, so it's easy for a community to understand what is being updated and what's being changed. So I just wanted to highlight that, and yeah, and we'll see that as a more common practice throughout the organisation. So thank you. Councillors, can I have a motion, and can you state what your motion is, please? Councillor Horgan?
Sorry, my screen disappeared. Thank you. Through you, Mayor Binks. So I would like to move a motion that we adopt the recommendation of page 175 of the agenda, please.
Thank you, Councillor Horgan. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Rayburn, thank you. Councillor Horgan, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thanks.
Councillor Rayburn, would you like to speak to the motion? He's frozen on my screen.
No, thanks, Mayor.
Great, there you are. Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No? Okay, councillors, I shall put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands for all those in favour, please? Thank you. And against? Yeah, that carried. Councillor Rayburn, can I just ask you to turn your screen, your video on and off for a moment? You've just frozen on my screen. I'm not sure if that's what's occurring for other people. We'll just see if that there you go. You're moving again. Thank you. Thanks for that. Thanks everyone for your patience as we get back into this digital space. Okay, we now move to page 187 of the agenda, item 9.5.2, Chief Executive Officer Contract Extension, and yes, CEO Solomon.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, I have a conflict of interest, a material conflict of interest, so I will leave the meeting at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Okay, so I can confirm that the CEO has left the meeting. So, Director Bray, may we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. Councillors, this is just a follow-up from a resolution, which is why I'm presenting the report, and the report's on behalf of the Mayor. But I'm presenting this because it's really just a follow-up on a resolution from March 22, where Council considered the recommendations of the CEO Remuneration and Employment Committee that undertook an annual review of the CEO's performance. And in terms of the resolution back in March, it talked about an extension of the Chief Executive Officer's contract for a period of 2 years to take it to the 12th of January 2025. Council couldn't actually move that motion or make that a resolution to extend the contract itself back then, because in the contract it says it's got to be within 6 months of the contract lapsing, and certainly the 12th of July is when the 6-month period started. So it's really just making that decision within the 6-month period as per the contract terms. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bray. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification for the Director on this item? No? Okay, I shall. Councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Yes, Councillor Rayburn.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation on page 187 be adopted by Council. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Do I have a seconder to the motion, please? Councillor Hayes-Burke, thank you. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Rayburn?
I'll just follow up on Director Bray's just stated. This is just a fundamental thing we must do as per our requirement when we've done our review of the CEO's remuneration package. We made a decision back in March to extend it for 2 years, but we couldn't do that until this, and this is just a fundamental pace of ticking the right box.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Councillor Hayes-Burke, would you like to speak to the motion? Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No? Okay, councillors, I shall put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands for all those in favour, please? And against? And declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. Director Bray, can you please request that the CEO rejoin the meeting? And we will just wait for her return. And we have CEO Solomon back in our virtual meeting room with us. So we shall continue to page 190 of the agenda, item 9.5.3, monthly performance report. Director Bray, can we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. This is always a good note to end the meeting on. So we have some, I know you get sick of me saying the same thing every month, but yes, we have more figures that are larger than the last months in terms of building activity. If you look at the graph on page 191, we've had nearly $8.5 million worth of building activity across the Shire. Which is again a significant amount of development work that's going on at the moment. And if you go through the listings on page 192 and 193, a lot of it is still dwellings and garages. So I know we've talked a bit about the housing shortage and the housing crisis tonight. Certainly there is a significant amount of housing activity being undertaken across the Shire. In terms of planning applications, we've certainly got quite a few that have been determined, and that represents about another $1 million worth of works. In terms of customer requests, again, we've had another busy month in terms of potholes, trees, and also planning inquiries. So we've had 195 planning inquiries this month, which is, again, another increase on last month. And obviously, we're having the continuing issues with the state of the roads and the storms that are coming through. And I know we had another storm that came through on the weekend. So those trends will continue. In terms of waste, collection tonnages are slightly down, and our contamination rates are slightly up, but still quite low compared to a lot of other regional councils. So the community is still doing their bit in terms of waste diversion. I think that will do, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Director Bray.
You can tell it's late.
It's been a long day for all of us, yes. Okay, councillors, were there any questions of clarification for Director Bray? No? Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Hayes-Burke.
I would like to pass the motion that the report be noted.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Murray, thank you. Councillor Hayes-Burke, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just to thank Director Bray for her summary, and just thank all the officers for their hard work at this challenging time where I know there's lots of staff shortages, but we're trying to carry on as business per usual as much as we can. So thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Councillor Murray, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just briefly to say that it's good to see so much building activity going around. despite the shortages and problems with materials and so on. So I think that's good. And so many planning applications being determined, I think that's terrific. Our planning department is working really hard and being very efficient, I think, at the moment. And it is pleasing to see Hughes Creek coming up with the majority of those. So I'm very pleased as their representative down there. There's obviously a lot of growth happening down in that part of the world as well as Ngambie.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Murray. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Okay, councillors, I shall put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands for all those in favour, please? And against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. CEO Solomon, are there any notices of motion?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor. I received a notice of motion from yourself to note a report on your attendance to the Australian Local Government Association 2022 National General Assembly, Partners in Progress in Canberra, as set out in the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO Solomon. So, councillors, as I guess as way of reporting back, we, as the community will know, and you voted on, I was given some budget money to attend this conference because it is interstate, and that's a requirement of our governance rules that we get council approval for interstate travel. So to attend this conference on behalf of Strathbogie Shire, and it was a really fabulous experience. I'm really glad that that you approved the funding and that I was able to go, because the growth and the learning that I gained from getting up to Canberra has been really beneficial. I mean, just today I got a reply letter because I wrote hand notes to most of the ministers, including the Prime Minister, and I got a note back from the Prime Minister this afternoon. So the advocacy opportunities of such an event, to go up there and to meet with the new government, the ministers. We had 4 ministers present, as well as the Prime Minister was meeting with specific mayors, to those that have been impacted in the Northern Rivers region, particularly. And so, you know, the presence of sort of the new government in office in Canberra was a really great opportunity for Strathbogie Shire to present our case to those people, and also to understand, you know, the new working relationship that the new federal government is setting out to create. And I expressed our willingness as a council to work collaboratively with the new federal government. They have a real commitment to working across all sectors of government, all spheres, all levels, and that has been exhibited in their appointment of a local government minister in Catherine King as the inner minister in cabinet, and also the outer minister, Christy McVeigh, who both represent the local government sector. There's a lengthy summary on page, oh gosh, I don't even know what page it's on, of 210 of the agenda. At the start, I just outlined some of the top learnings, which I think the biggest takeaway for me was that local government, you know, on a national level, local government delivers 25% of services and infrastructure with only 4% of the tax revenue. And there was a lot of conversation about how much we do manage to deliver on such a small allocation from the, from the national tax revenue. That was a really interesting figure, I thought. The importance of partnerships between levels of government, regardless of political alliances, was a really encouraging takeaway, and there were some great examples of how the current government is working to ensure that and to make that come about. Back on the housing topic, which we've spoken about this evening, and a conversation around, you know, does housing need to become essential infrastructure? We have such a housing crisis across Australia. This is being experienced by local government areas from Tasmania to the Torres Straits, and there was a conversation about what we can do as a sector to advocate for it to have better support. Change should be in spells, not as well as. that's a really challenging one, because often when we implement change, we continue to do what we've been doing up until we bring in the change, and we don't always sort of stop and change, and change is can be quite a challenge. But we need to look at doing things instead of rather than as well as. So that was a really interesting learning. And then the investment in disaster preparedness as an essential for our future. There was a big conversation. Obviously, this had been the biggest in-person gathering of the local government sector across Australia since the bushfires in the 2021-2020 summer, and obviously following that we've had the floods and significant impact from national disaster. And currently the spend at a national level is 97% is on disaster response and only 3% is on preparedness. So there's a real push from across the local government sector right across Australia to shift that balance so that we're actually investing more in preparedness and disaster preparedness. And then this idea of spheres and not tiers, and South Africa presented to us, which was really interesting, and trying to maybe look at things more linearly rather than hierarchically. And so there's a lengthy report there, because I took lots of notes and was really fascinated to sort of learn in that environment. So there's also a link to a short video of a strategy workshop that I participated in that's available for people to see. So I really encourage my councillors, but also public that are interested to check it out and see what I learned on behalf of Strathbogie Shire Council. So, councillors, there is a notice of motion on page, what is it, page 210 of the, no, hang on, yes, it is, sorry, I'm just getting to the page, 208 of the agenda. There is a recommendation, and would a councillor, yes, do you have any questions of the presenter? Sorry, this is a bit back to front. Yes, Councillor Haysbert.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Binks. I'm just curious. I mean, I'm sure there was a lot that you took away from it, and maybe not, you didn't have something that was your favourite, but I also want to ask you, what do you think that the referendum will mean for local government that the federal government's proposing?
I think my favourite, I think, was just the opportunity to sort of learn in a space with other people that are experiencing similar challenges and opportunities of which we are. I think that's a really, that's a really great chance to sort of get, you're sitting next to different people every session, so you just, there's lots of chatting, and there's, I think, Councillor Hourigan expressed it after attending the conference. It's like, you can talk the same talk because these people get it as well because they're going through the same thing. So that was a real great opportunity for me. In terms of the referendum on the voice to Parliament, we had Minister Burney speak with us on the final day of the referendum, and whilst I can't yet talk as to what the impact will be for local government, what I do know is that local government will play a really important part in that process. I know as part of the work of the Australian Local Government Association, we moved motions, and we moved lots of motions during the 4 days of conference to what that organisation will advocate for. And one of the motions that we moved was that the association support the Uluru Statement from the Heart in full and work with the federal government to develop a toolkit to assist local councils in the process around the referendum. So I know that whilst I'm not yet sure of what that will mean for local council, because we're still quite early on in the process, I do know that local governments and local councils will play an important role in that process. Is there any other questions? Councillors, can I have a motion, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Haysbert.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to move the motion to note the report from you and attending the Australian Local Government Association Conference General Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. Is there a seconder to the report, to the motion? Sorry, Councillor Rayburn. Thank you. Councillor Haysbert, would you like to speak to the motion?
I'd just like to thank you very much for all your learnings and bringing those back. I feel like they've already been really valuable to us as a councillor group. And your report's extremely detailed and impressive. You were clearly the right person to attend the conference from the Shire. So thanks for representing us in Canberra and advocating to ministers on our behalf.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. Councillor Rayburn, would you like to speak?
Thanks, Mayor. These are very important for councillors to attend, and especially the Mayor, when you get the opportunity to go and sit next to other mayors and other councillors and talk the talk and work the work and work out how life's going and where everybody else is at, and an understanding of what council life and councillors are doing throughout Australia. It's a great benefit to everybody, and I recommend to have it the Mayor next year and the year after and all. I think these are great ways for each of them to learn and to grow in their position of mayors, and also for council to get benefit back to us for our community to be able to understand what is happening in the real world out there, not just in Strathbogie.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Would any other councillor like to speak? Nope. Okay, I shall put the motion to a vote. Can I get a show of hands for all those in favour? And against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. CEO Sullivan, are there any notices of rescission?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, no, there are no notices of rescission for this evening.
And is there any urgent business to consider?
Again, through you, Mayor, there is no urgent business.
Thank you, CEO Solomon. Is there any confidential business to consider?
Once again, through you, no, there is no urgent business, Mayor.
Confidential, that one was, but yes.
Sorry, yes, no confidential business either. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, councillors, the next meeting of council is the ordinary council meeting scheduled to be held on Tuesday, the 16th of August 2022, to be held virtually and streamed through our website due to the COVID-19 pandemic advice from the state government, commencing at 6 p.m. There being no further business, I declare that the meeting closed at 9:31 p.m. Thank you and good night.